Music to the noise, yeah, the mess we make. Machine Pun Kelly get caught in the fake. Facts and logic with a twist of chest. Strip it down to truth, yeah, forget the rest. Humor pulls the lies right out of the park. Look beyond the shadows that set the dark. Sparks of laughter fire up the night, bringing clarity when they blur the fight. Cut through the chaos, yeah, the tangled lies. Steampunk Kelly with the set of clear eyes. Truths and jokes gonna rock this show. Step into light where the real facts flow.
Hello and welcome to the Punch Show. Hope you had a good weekend, although in many ways it was a terrible weekend. There was another mass shooting at Brown. There was the mass shooting in Australia, the anti-Semitic one. Rob Reiner was murdered. It's just like really terrible in a lot of ways. And you know, the thing I spent a lot of time yesterday on was I've kind of just had it up to here and then some with anti-gun control arguments. And so I wanted to spend basically today's entire show going over that. I have compiled a list of the dumbest NRA talking points when it comes to gun control. I'm going to go through those one by one. And just before I start diving into that, I just wanted to make mention of one other thing, which is Donald Trump's reaction to Rob Reiner being murdered, which was to blame Reiner for his TDS for making somebody angry enough to shoot him. And, you know, of course, it turns out it wasn't even somebody who did that. But it is interesting that Trump's mind first went there. First of all, like that he would not only accept or, you know, like just automatically jump to the conclusion that the murder was because of him, but to endorse it. Wow. Hi, everybody. Wow, I'm getting a bunch of highs here. Hello, everybody that just joined the show. Appreciate you. Wow. I don't usually get greetings from people. I don't know what to do with that. It's like so kind and nice. And I'm usually getting called an idiot without an apostrophe in the or. But anyway, I saw that and I just could not believe that he was blaming Reiner for his own murder. And I think no matter who you voted for, no matter what your objective was in voting, that you should condemn that. Like, this would, like, people that were upset that people celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder should also be upset, because this is the same. If you're going to be upset with a college girl for making a TikTok video, you should definitely be upset with the president of the United States for being even more vile. Like, according to Donald Trump's logic, Charlie Kirk invited his own murder with his anti-trans rhetoric and making the transgender girlfriend, the transgender girl's boyfriend, mad enough to shoot him. Like, this is just, and of course it turns out to be nonsense. It's probably Reiner's son and has nothing to do with politics, but that Trump would not only just jump into that notion right away and then like make it somehow like he's the good guy in this deal. It was just disgusting. That is, like, of all the vile things Trump has done, I wouldn't say this is the most vile, but in some ways it's the most just obscene. Yes, they usually call me an idiot, but it's like you're an idiot without the apostrophe. Like they say you're, like the possessive you're, not the contraction you're. Um so yeah, I guess okay, thanks for playing, empty player. So all right. With that said, with all that prefaced, I just wanted to mention that I think that's really, really, really horrible first. But now I want to go into the whole anti gun control arguments and talk about that. The entire notion of gun control back before, like years ago, I was living in Chicago, and I don't know if you remember when there was the shooting in at Northern Illinois. But I was living in Chicago. I was a minister, and we were I had some I basically I worked with college kids, and there was some kids in our church that went to that university, and so I went to go check on them, and we had a table and we were giving out Bibles and stuff, and I was just talking to my friend, the kid and his friends, and just asking them how they were doing and talking to them about the situation. And as I was talking to them, uh, and I just asked, like, what were you doing? What were you thinking? Because, like, what I really wanted to know, right? And and I was, just taking care of them as people. Wasn't so much worried about, beating them over the head with the gospel or anything. And each one of them, they would tell me that they were, for the most part, texting their loved ones. I don't know if I'm going to see you again, but I love you. Goodbye if this is it. Like that's where their hearts were. And I must have talked to like 100 people. And it wasn't until I was coming home that I realized that not one person had told me they wished they had a gun. Like not one of them. And it wasn't like planned. I wasn't like going for that. I wasn't probing that. I wasn't doing some kind of study. It just occurred to me. And I had been under the impression that this was my one conservative issue, like where I was like, I understand we need guns to protect us in case the government overreaches or whatever. And I kind of went along with that. And I'm definitely a human being. I don't know if that's not obvious. Constant thing throwing here wants to know if I'm a human being. I if AI start doing live broadcasts, then we're really in trouble. So anyway, I was it just occurred to me, none of them asked for a gun. Like when you're actually in that situation, the thing you're not thinking about is that you want to shoot the guy. The thing you're thinking about is the people you love and whether you're going to see them again. And so it got me to, like just considering whether this right to have guns to defend yourself against a tyrannical government is sufficient logic to like have kids that are 18, 19 years old cowering under a table in a lunchroom wondering if they're ever going to see their family again. And this was, one of the first shootings. This was before it became like a monthly activity, and there were school shooting drills and stuff like that. And so then I started doing some research into whether or not it was actually true. So I just want to say happy birthday, Nick. Nick Gurr. So oh, I see. He's that's not his real name. Winches, by the way, that's just you're banned from the channel. I don't put up with that kind of crap. All right, so racism is not a joke to me. Please don't even try with that. So the next thing I want to talk about, so what the entire premise of the NRA's argument is that we have this Second Amendment because the founding fathers overthrew a tyrannical government. And so when they wrote the Constitution, they wanted to make sure that the ability to oppose a tyrannical government was embedded in it. They wanted to make sure it could never happen to them, or that you know, they never have to worry about a tyrannical government again, that people would have the right to overthrow it, and so on and so forth, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. That is crap. That entire notion is absolute 100%, 180 degrees opposite of what actually happened. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through, I'm going to explain what really happened, what the real history is, and why we have the Second Amendment. The real reason is actually the opposite of what they say. Okay, so I made this dashboard. I'm going to go through a lot of arguments here, all right? So if you have questions or whatever, you can ask them, but I'm not going to I'm going to try not to get distracted by the comments and jump around. Everything will come in its due time. And I'm going to start from the beginning. What is the Second Amendment? Why is it there? What happened? What is the actual truth behind it? Okay. So let's go. The claim is the Second Amendment exists so citizens can resist government overreach, right? That's the NRA claim. The mythology is the founders fought a revolution against tyrannical taxation, so they wrote the Second Amendment to protect future revolutions. Crushing irony, here's what happened, okay? The Constitution was not actually written in response to the revolution. The Articles of Confederation were. Then the Articles of Confederation failed, and the Constitution was written as a response to the Articles of Confederation failing. And that's the thing, the NRA, this whole Articles of Confederation part is that part that the NRA likes to just leapfrog over. And that is an extremely significant part. Because what happened is in Massachusetts, there was a governor named Bowdoin, and he was taxing his taxes were like 60 times higher than the taxes that were under King George. And like one of the quotes, if tyranny had come once in the form of a British tax collector, it now came in the guise of sheriffs and lawyers enforcing writs of foreclosure. Like people were going out of business. They were losing their farms. The tax was so high they couldn't even pay for it. It was a third of their income. So they did what rebels do. They rebelled. They had an insurrection. And here's what happened. They call it, this was called the Shays Rebellion. It was under a guy named Shay led it. And farmers angry about taxes. They took up arms against Massachusetts. The federal government then, under the Articles of Confederation, couldn't stop it. It was too weak and it had no militia powers. There was no military means by which the federal government could stop it. There was no militia. right? And I say militia very deliberately. There was no militia, and so it failed. And then eventually there was enough money owed, or enough money got put into private militias that they were able to suppress the rebellion. But then after that, they had a constitutional convention. That's when they said, oh, this federal government, this Articles of Confederation isn't working. We need to rethink how we're doing this government thing. Because here's the deal. Did you know this? That the people, that the revolution wasn't free, right? The country had to pay for the revolution. And the people that paid for the revolution, we call them the founding fathers. The people that we owed money to were the people that came up with the government. And they came up with the government in this thing called the Philadelphia Delegation. And the first two things they did in that delegation where they got the government is they decided, okay, the government has the authority to lay and collect taxes, and the government has the authority to have a militia. All right, to make sure that those taxes get paid. And the people that were owed the money were making sure they got paid back. That's why we have a constitution. It's the founding fathers wanted to make sure they were going to get repaid. Did you know that? Now, there were some ideals in there, and there were some principles in there that were good and noble. And there was also a lot of stuff that wasn't good and noble. But the general reason, the entire reason that we have a constitution is the government realized it needed to be able to put down rebellions. Not to be able to have them, to be able to put them down. Shays' Rebellion is the reason we have a constitution. All right. So got a lot of insults in here, but nothing, no actual criticisms of the argument. Okay. History major, yes. My name, okay. All right. So anyway. Interesting. So looks like almost all the Twitter or all the YouTube people left. So anyway, the American Revolution was mixed. Yes, there was some foreign loans like France, and the private wealth was mostly by the people we now call the founding fathers, and they were the ones whom the Philadelphia delegation was. All right, so they got together, they decided we got to get our taxes paid back. Right. So in the Constitution itself, before there were any amendments or anything, there was in there who could control the military or the militia, as they called it. Like, who has the power to call it up? The President of the United States. How it's organized and structured. It's in Article 1, the Congress, and combination of the Congress and the government. Okay? So they got together, they ratified the Constitution because it was, they drafted, they debated, they argued the Constitution. We've got the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers in there. We'll touch on that later. But in that document, they came up with, this is what the power of the militia is. This is who organizes it. This is who can call it up. Then after it was done, there was still some questions about these militias. How's it going to be armed was the primary one. And so there were some debates about the Second Amendment. In the Second Amendment, it starts off that, it says that a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. All right. That, and we'll get into Heller and Scalia's just dubious, incorrect decision in Heller. We'll get into that later too. But they specifically stated that the reason we have this right to bear arms is because we need a militia. And I'll go more into the drafting history of it and prove that this was not about some individual right. This was specifically about militias. The Second Amendment is not a right to bear arms. The Second Amendment is the state's rights to have a militia that is armed. And we know this because the first two laws that were passed after the Second Amendment was ratified were the First and Second Militia Acts. The First Militia Act, the Second Amendment was ratified in 1791. In May 1792, 5 months after the Second Amendment, was ratified, we passed the Militia Act, the First and Second Militia Acts. And so this is what authorized in legislation the ability for the president to call up the militia when needed. And it wasn't that long later. This is not all hypothetical. In 1794, there was another rebellion called the Whiskey Rebellion. And in the Whiskey Rebellion, I forgot about this. The people that, okay, so, all right, never mind. All right, so some of this I'm just covering by memory. So in the Whiskey Rebellion, what happened is there was this tax on whiskey. There was kind of like a regressive tax. Like if you were a poor whiskey maker, you ended up paying a higher tax than if you were a wealthy whiskey maker, and so on and so forth. And hang on, let me unmess up this. Just realized something. No, okay. There, that's what I'm looking for. So the Whiskey Rebellion was another thing where it was like the taxes were not popular, and so there was a rebellion. And nobody likes having their whiskey taxed. Okay, I'm wrong about that. Okay. You said things and I'm wrong about that, but I'm not wrong about that. And the things you're saying are wrong. And it's not really relevant because, again, actions speak louder than words. When the Whiskey Rebellion happened, the person that led the militia to shut down what is going on with this? I'm sorry, I don't understand what's going on here. Trying to figure out why this profile, anyway, one of the views is all messed up and I don't know why. But I might as well just try to fix this. All right. Let's try that one. I think that's as good as it's going to get. So, all right. well, maybe just this. I do not know what happened here. So George Washington led the rebellion that shut down the Whiskey Rebellion. The founding fathers put down an insurrection. Do you get me? George Washington himself put down an insurrection that was over taxes, the same thing that the founding fathers fought the revolution over, and taxation without representation. But the taxes that they were rebelling over were even higher than the taxes that we fought the revolution over. This notion that the founding fathers put the Second Amendment in there to protect the right of the people to overthrow the government is completely debunked by the fact that right after they passed the Second Amendment, they passed laws that enabled them to put down an insurrection that was being carried out by people that thought that there was a tyrannical government that they were trying to overthrow. In the language of the Constitution, it says literally that the militia is there in part to protect against invasion and to suppress insurrections. That's why we had the militias in the first place. So you can't take the word militia from the first or the second articles of the Constitution and then make it a completely different, disparate thing from when they talk about the insurrection or about the militia in the Second Amendment. It's the same militias. It's not like there's a different militia there. You can't have it that way. The militia in the Second Amendment is the point of the Second Amendment. And the point of the militia in the Constitution is to put down insurrections. That's what the Constitution says. You don't even need to go beyond the Constitution to prove that argument. And you don't need to go beyond history to reinforce it. The founding fathers, the people who wrote the Second Amendment, are the ones who put down the insurrection. All right. At least I did have one person engage with me on the content, even if what they're saying is wrong. And this whole idea, like printing money and stuff, like that's just like people think that anyway. No, I mean, I don't even know why people say things like this sometimes. No, the Congress did not print vast amounts of money, of paper money. All right. I'll look into it, but I don't think that's accurate. But it's also not relevant. The point is that the founding fathers are the ones who put down insurrections using the Second Amendment. All right. So let's go back to the dashboard. The bottom line, the Constitution wasn't written to celebrate the revolution. It was written in response to Shays' Rebellion. It was a full 10 years that went by, and you can't just leapfrog over that. The Second Amendment is about resisting tyranny. It's about preventing armed resistance to the government. This is the final devastating truth. The people who claim to be fighting tyranny, this is the other thing. These people that were like fighting tyranny, they were tyrants. They literally owned other human beings as property. They considered Native Americans subhuman or not human at all. They only allowed land-owning white men to vote. And they created the 3/5 compromise, which we're always talking about, oh, blacks only counted as 3/5 of a person. No, black people you owned added 3/5 of a person more to your vote. The more black people you owned, the more power you had. Didn't do anything. The black people didn't count as any part of a person as far as the black person goes. It just meant the more people you owned, the more voting power you had. These were tyrants. And so this notion that the Second Amendment was to protect us against tyranny, no, it wasn't. Tell that to the slaves that died. They were owned. They were owned by tyrants. They were not allowed guns. Why do you think they weren't allowed guns? How long do you think they would have been slaves if they were allowed to have guns? Robert E. Lee, and this has nothing to do with this, and neither does Lincoln. I don't know why you're bringing that up. Confederacy equals yes, the Democrat Party in the 1800s. Yes. We're not talking about Democrats. We're talking about gun control. Please stay focused. So, this entire notion that the Second Amendment was written to protect your rights to overthrow a tyrannical government is not at all right. The Second Amendment was written so that a tyrannical government can put down your little tiny insurrection. All right, let's move on to the next point. Okay, the next thing is like that the founders would have been against gun control. All right, the founders practiced gun control. The idea, like people will say, oh, that somehow there wasn't gun control back in the colonial days. The reality is, first of all, enslaved people couldn't own it. Native Americans couldn't own them. Loyalists couldn't own them. Sometimes Catholics couldn't own them. There were carry restrictions for public gatherings. There were concealed carry laws. There were discharge limits. Some places, especially like in towns and cities, you could not store guns in your house, or you couldn't stun. You had to keep your powder and your guns separate because they were unstable, and a lot of these communities were like mostly wooden houses, and so if something happened and your gunpowder blew up, then your house could catch on fire. And if your house caught on fire, your neighbor's house could catch on fire. And then like half the town could catch on fire. So you had to keep them in an armory, including, believe it or not, Concord, home of the Minutemen. So like right now nowadays we're like, oh, well, you could have a gun for self-defense and, and there's that. They didn't use guns for self-defense. Not really. You had your musket in an armory a mile away. So somebody breaks into your house, you're going to be like, hey, can you just hold on there for a minute? I'm going to run down to the armory. I'm going to get my musket and some sack of gunpowder. I'm going to run back up and I'm going to let me just pack in these musket balls. And then okay, now we can go again. People weren't using their muskets to fight off home invaders. Why did they have muskets? Why did they have guns at all? Is because for the most part, most of these state militias needed people to have guns. They didn't have the money to pay for guns, so they required people of fighting age to own their own guns. And there's like a lot of interesting stuff you can read about like people that didn't maintain their guns and whether or not they really followed these laws and stuff. But the real gun control controversy over there wasn't about gun control. It's about whether or not, like, the people that were supposed to have guns so they could serve in the militia when they needed to actually had guns that were serviceable. I was actually, if you look at some of the debate that was going into the Second Amendment, that was why it was there. And I also find an interesting corollary to this whole argument is if it's really about the right to own a gun if you want to, wouldn't gun requirement laws contradict that right? Like, if you have the right to determine if you own a gun, wouldn't the right to not own a gun also be covered by the same thing? But there were all these laws that you had to own a gun. So that is a self-contradictory argument already. There were all kinds of laws that you had to own a gun. There were laws about where you could carry guns. There were laws about where you could store guns. There were laws about who could own guns. And this was the laws the founding fathers used. I mean, they weren't federal laws, they were state, they were local laws. But these are the laws that we are challenging in courts. So don't tell me that the founding fathers were against gun control because they practiced gun control. Oh, so somebody's saying lies. I don't know. Nothing I'm saying is lies. Okay. Yeah, we'll get to that one later. So, all right. Now, so we've established a couple of things, right? We've established that the Second Amendment wasn't there to protect you from government overreach or tyranny. It's actually there that government overreach or tyranny can suppress your little, cosplay rebellions. And the founding fathers actually practiced gun control. So this brings us into the whole Heller settled it individual right thing. You always get these people that are yelling and going on about Heller as though Heller is like the impeachable Supreme Court decision. Like the people that argued that Roe versus Wade was wrong and fought for decades to overturn it until they finally, literally bought a Supreme Court that overturned it. But Heller is like the unimpeachable, the single most ironclad Supreme Court decision in history, even though Scalia was just absolutely ignoring actual history and just completely wrong in the decision. But basically, it comes down to him dismissing the militia clause. And to justify this, and I've seen this so many times, people compare the Second Amendment to a well-balanced breakfast. They'll say, a well-balanced breakfast being necessary for a healthy diet, the rights of the people to eat food shall not be infringed. And they're comparing the well-balanced breakfast to the well-regulated militia. This is why I go back. There, in the first and second articles of the Constitution, it very specifically lays out what regulated means. A well-regulated militia means that there is an external force operating on that militia. There's not an external force operating on your ballot, on your diet, on your breakfast. It's not like there is this other thing that's determining what is in your breakfast. The government is what regulates the militia. And it says things specifically. Who appoints the officers? Did Congress appoint your little cosplay militia? No? Okay, then you're not what the Constitution means with a militia. The militia is governed by the combination of the president, the Congress, and the state governor. It's in the Constitution. You can look it up. Just go get a copy of the Constitution and then just like do a Control F and search the word militia. Save you, like make it as easy as possible for you. Just read what the actual Constitution says about the militia. Everybody wants to just make it seem like the word militia only appears in the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is about the militia. The Second Amendment is not about guns. All right. I'm sorry if that hurts your little NRA feelings, but it's true. And Scalia sat there and he took the actual point of the entire Second Amendment and just threw it out the window and rewrote the Second Amendment. Do you think that they were just like, boy, this would sound more poetic if we put a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state in there? Do you think they just put that in there for word filler? Why would they put it in there if it wasn't relevant? It's a dumb decision that was made for purely partisan political reasons and has no business being a Supreme Court decision. But the Supreme Court got sold to people driving fancy motorhomes. Okay. So here's the claim. Oh, Madison's draft shows individual right. All right. And so people will say that, like the individual right is inferred from previous drafts of the Constitution, right? Here's the drafting history. In Pennsylvania Constitution, it says the right to bear arms for defense of themselves and the state. And Madison's initial draft had that kind of language in it. But the House, they moved the militia to the front on purpose. And they still had the individual part in it. Then the Senate finale version said, they removed the individual exemptions and kept only the militia framework. So the point is that the draft history shows not that the individual right was included, but it was excluded. It's not like they didn't consider it and then just forgot to put it in the final version. They considered it and said, no, this is not part of it. They literally did not include the individual right to bear arms. They excluded it. There was a deliberate thought. First, to move it to the back to make it subsequent to the militia version, then to exclude it entirely. This is not what they intended. If they wanted it to be about the individual right, they would have kept it in there that it's an individual right. But they excluded it from the draft. That means that is not what they wanted in the final version. I don't see how anybody can interpret that any other way and still consider themselves a remotely honest person. It is like one of the worst decisions in constitutional history, right up there with Dred Scott, or not Dred Scott, whatever, the slave. I can't think of his name. But like, it was that terrible. Was it Dred Scott? Maybe it is. All right. So then people will say, what about the Federalist Papers? And, so there were some arguments in there that were like, people have interpreted as being pro-gun control, and you'll see these quotes out of context and all of that. And I won't go through the whole thing. But first of all, I'll just say the Federalist Papers were propaganda. They were deliberately propaganda. I'm not saying that hyperbolically. They were actual propaganda. Like they were cherry-picked things and made to win arguments over the populace. They were not arguments made to create policy. And Madison was just trying to tamper down the fears of the anti-federalists. But here's the thing. What they said and what they did are very different. You can talk all you want about what he meant, but the reality is what they did is different. The Federalists, the fact they put down the Whiskey Rebellion, again, they put down the Whiskey Rebellion. They literally led the militia using the Second Amendment to arm it to put down an insurrection, i.e., a group of people that felt like the government was being tyrannical and trying to overthrow it. So the founding fathers themselves, their own actions, debunk your interpretation of the Federalist Papers. What people say and what people do are not always consistent. And when they're inconsistent, look at what they do, not at what they said. All right. Okay, so now this is the well-balanced breakfast analogy. I forgot I add that one later. But yes, the balanced is an intrinsic thing. Regulated is a passive thing, requiring an external regulator, which is, in this case, the government. The government regulates the militia. If you little cosplay group of, cosplayers that play in the woods, you're not a militia. You're just cosplayers. Maybe you can join ICE and, like become a Navy SEAL, but you're not in the militia. Article 1, Section 8, Congress organizes, arms, and disciplines. Does Congress organize, arm, and discipline your little group of cosplayers? No? Okay, then you're not a militia. Does the state appoint the officers? No, you're not in the militia. Does the president command when you're federalized? Can the president federalize your group of cosplayers? No, you're not in the militia. You can't sit there and make the militia in the Second Amendment something different that's in the militia everywhere else in the Constitution. This separation of, and it's so weird. It's like the militia counts when you're like talking about your little group of cosplayers, but the militia doesn't count when you're talking about the application of gun control laws. The logical consistency of Second Amendmenters is just crazy. You do not, and they sit there, they're so filled with their disinformation and their wrong information that they'll sit there and they'll call me an idiot and they'll call me names and stuff like that, and they'll quote Madison out of context, and they'll ignore like the fact that actual George Washington put down an insurrection. I had one guy trying to tell me there's a difference between a rebellion and an insurrection one time. Went on for days about it, trying to pick at me at Twitter. Like, dude, the only difference between a rebellion and an insurrection is who won. If you win, it's an if you win, it's a rebellion. If you lose, it's an insurrection. Okay. All right. So that's like, I think that covers the whole historical framework by which we understand the Second Amendment. There is no reason at all that we cannot have gun control laws. There is not a constitutional right to bear arms. I don't care how many people have told you that. It is not true. Now, fundamentally, do I disagree with people being able to arm themselves, or to be able to go hunting or to arm themselves against gun control? I have no objection to that. And I think that too often we frame this argument as everybody has guns or nobody has guns. I think that there is this like massive room for nuance here. There is room for looking at people and determining who should have guns and what kind of guns they should be allowed to have. I think that probably 90% of the country agrees with that statement. Now, exactly what those conditions are, there may be more disagreement on, but I don't think that most people think that absolutely nobody should ever be allowed to own a gun. There are some, I'm not saying there aren't any. There are some people that think that no matter if you're, even if you're a terrorist that wants to walk into Walmart and get a gun right now, along with two 100 round magazines and 10,000 rounds of ammo, and, you know, just so they can shoot up the store, that's their right. There's some people would say there's no rights at all, or no infringement on your rights at all. And they'll just sit there and they'll yell, shall not be infringed, as though they're making some kind of point instead of just shouting stupid things. All right. Yes, all our rights can be infringed, right? There's your speech is infringed. You're not allowed to lie about other people. You can get sued for that. Their speech, if you were to threaten the life of the president of the United States, you could get arrested for that. There's speech that is not protected. There is written speech that is not protected. All right. All our rights have limitations. And generally, the limitation, if you wanted to put it in a blanket term, is when it starts infringing on other people's rights. If my rights prevent your rights, then there's this area where we have to decide who has rights and who doesn't. And like one way I think of putting this is thinking of it in a way that is A, not controversial, and B, not political. But let's say you think that you have the right to drive as fast as you can in as big of a car as you can, and nobody should have the right to get in your way. And so you just get this big old Hummer with, like, you know, blades and stuff like that, and you just go speeding down the interstate in the middle of rush hour, just bulldozing people out of the way and going 100 miles an hour. And if anybody's in your way, that's their fault, and too bad. They're interfering with your rights, right? I think we would all agree that that's not a right, that public safety matters, that other people also have rights to be on that same publicly owned road, right? There's limitations to the right to, like, be on the road. You have to have a driver's license. You have to have a registered vehicle. Like, all of these things are limitations on your rights. You just don't think of them as limitations. A speed limit is a limitation on your right. That's weird. Anyway, sorry, I'm just looking at some of these context and comments, and just people saying some weird things that I don't even understand where they're getting it. Like somebody saying, you screamed at Alex Jones for the same BS. I don't know what conspiracy I'm talking about, but anyway, I'm not like denying anything happened. I have no idea. Unless are you talking to somebody in the comment section? I don't know. So, and I've never been accused of looking like Alex Jones. So, all right. there are limitations on our rights, and there are limitations on gun rights. And if there are any at all, yes, shall not be infringed isn't. I think that most people agree that you should have a right to have a gun to defend yourself. And most people agree that you should not have a right to just buy a gun regardless of who you are. Like, and you shouldn't be able to buy whatever weapon you want, because it doesn't say guns, it says arms. So I don't think most people agree that a terrorist should be able to go and buy a nuclear weapon. There is a middle in all of that. And I think if we can agree that that's the discussion we need to have, it would make this whole conversation a lot easier. Who should be able to buy a weapon, and what kind of weapon should they buy? That would definitely give us a lot more common ground than difference. All right. So let's talk about this in terms of gun control, not gun exclusion. I've never said that. I've never argued that. I don't think that we should ban guns. But every time you talk about gun control, you get Second Amendmenters that want to talk about, oh, you're trying to take away my guns. No, I'm not trying to take away your guns. All right. And we'll get into that in a minute. But this other thing is like, we can't do anything about gun deaths. If we want, there's nothing we can do. All the guns are out there. If we do this, only the bad guys will have guns. Here's the thing. We have a lot less death that we do a lot more about. And, speaking to the MAGA crowd, there's this commercial driver's license thing, right? Where some undocumented workers have had commercial driver's license. They've received official commercial driver's licenses that they probably should not have received. Like, they'll either get them for longer than they should or whatever. Like, they're all passing the road test and doing they're passing all the safety requirements, but they're getting licenses in spite of not having the residency requirements. And there have been like 5 people have died as a result of that. And because those 5 people have died, we're going through and we're doing like all of this. We're auditing all these different states. We're threatening states that don't do things. We're ready to strip people of their highway funding. All kinds of we. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be doing all that. I'm not saying we should be. I'm not making a comment about whether or not we should be. What I'm saying is, you're ready to do that over 5 deaths, but you're not willing to do that over 50,000 deaths. We had a guy take off his, try to bomb an airplane 25 years ago by hiding a bomb in his shoes. So for the next 25 years, I think they just changed that. For 25 years, we all took off our shoes every time we got on an airplane. How many millions and billions of people took off their shoes because one guy tried to hide a bomb in his shoe? And back in what was it? I think it was actually more like 40 years ago. I remember this like it was maybe in the 80s. Some guy went and like put some poison in a few Tylenol bottles and people died of this Tylenol poisoning, or not Tylenol, like the poisoning in the Tylenol, not Tylenol poisoning, but so and still 40 years later, nowadays you have to feel like you're trying to break into something when you buy any bottle of pharmaceutical stuff. I mean, it's like you've got stuff that you need a physics degree, a sledgehammer, a blowtorch, and a chainsaw just to get into the medicine. Don't even get me started on ibuprofen, or not on the what is it called? For when you got diarrhea. That stuff is like the stuff you need the most, and you sit there and then it's got the foil wrapping that's so hard to get into. Imodium, that's the word I'm trying to think of. Anyway, I don't know what, Timothy, I don't have any, sorry, I have no idea what conspiracy theory you think I'm spouting here. I haven't said anything that's a conspiracy theory. I don't know what you're talking about. Are you talking to me or are you talking to somebody else? Okay, let's go through some of these. Riddle me this. Riddle me this. What standpoint do you disagree with President Trump on and why? Okay, that's not the discussion we're having, so this guy is an idiot. Pepto, yeah, the Pepto is not so hard to get into. The Imodium with the foil wrappers is almost impossible. Okay. 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 Are you that man a mango? Okay. Are you talking to me? I am definitely not a Trump supporter. If you're talking to me, or are Timothy and Mango, are you two arguing with each other? Maybe that's it. Maybe that's why I don't know what's going on. Anyone with an ID and no violent felony convictions, just like it already is. Somebody's actually talking about the topic. Thank you, Kyle, for actually being on topic. So, back to said topic. The point I'm trying to make with all of this, like with the Tylenol and everything, is that we do a lot more based on a lot less. In the last 20 years, we've had nearly 1 million gun deaths. So don't tell me there's nothing we can do. And I'm not saying we need to get it down to 0. I'm just saying let's get it below 50,000 a year or 45,000 a year. Other countries can do it. We can too. We can improve our gun control laws. And like I said, gun control is not gun bans. So stop with that rhetoric. Okay. So that leads me into the next part. We can't prevent all deaths, so why try? This is the whole, perfect is the enemy of good. If we don't get rid of all deaths, what's the point, And so if you're not going to, speaking to the same logic, to the same people that make this argument, I would ask, are you going to get rid of all undocumented migrants? Is one person going to be able to sneak over the border no matter what you do? Like, if people are going to try hard enough to get a gun to kill someone, won't they try just as hard to get over the border to save their son? Why do you think that migrants coming over the border are going to try any less hard than somebody trying to carry out a mass shooting? So if that's the case, if you're saying unless we do a perfect job, we shouldn't do anything, what's the point of having immigration laws? If your argument is gun control laws aren't going to solve everything, why have immigration laws? If we're still going to have people come over the border, do you really think that nobody, not one undocumented person, has come over since Donald Trump became president? Do you really believe that? If so, you're gullible. So what's the point? If we can't stop it, why do it, right? If we can't stop guns, why do it? And you're like, oh, well, only criminals will have them. Well, if you stop immigration, if you stop legal immigration, only the criminals will immigrate. And like, there's all this, like, seatbelts don't prevent all traffic deaths, right? But they prevent more than they cause. Food safety doesn't catch all contamination, but at least we used to. We don't have jarts anymore for a reason. Like, not everybody that played jarts died. I played jarts. We used to play chicken jarts. Do you know what jarts are? In case you don't know what jarts are, they're the big giant lawn darts that people used to have. And you'd like, kind of like, you throw the darts and you try to get them in this big circle. But of course, we were kids, and so we played chicken jarts, where you had to stand there while your brother threw the jart as high as he could, and you had to like stand there and not move out of the way and like not get a chicken. And fortunately, I never got injured. Some people lost feet, or at least got stabbed in the feet playing that game. Like, that's why we don't have lawn jarts anymore. That's why if you're a millennial, you probably never heard of it or never played with them. But if you're a Gen X, you probably know what lawn jarts are, and there's a good chance you played jart chicken like I did. Okay, so if you stop immigration, then only criminals will immigrate. Brother, that makes no sense. If they are illegal, they are already criminals. Okay, you can say the same thing about if you make guns illegal, then all the criminals that will only criminals will own guns, right? Like, the logic is the same. Like, stop trying to make it out like gun control needs to be different than everything else. Okay, Bud, taking away guns from... Nobody's talking about taking away guns from law-abiding citizens. Like, I literally prefaced this for like 10 minutes. I talked about how I am absolutely not about taking away guns. And then I said, so please don't go into taking away guns. This is the argument I'm trying to avoid. It is not about... And so you say, taking away guns from law-abiding citizens is common behavior. So you agree with your statement that people who aren't law-abiding citizens should not have guns, which means you believe in gun control. I said, literally said, you should be able to have a gun to defend yourself. Understand what I am saying. I am not arguing that nobody should be able to have guns. I am arguing that gun control is a discussion about who can have guns. Okay. Exactly, Mr. West. This is the point. We are talking about gun control laws. This is where we need to have the discussion. How can they improve? How can we distill them down to make sure that the people who don't have guns don't have them, and the people that want to have them and aren't a danger can still have them? That is the discussion. How can we improve our gun control laws? It's not about whether or not we have them. It's about which ones we have and how they can be better. This is the real conversation we need to have, instead of just making it about stop trying to take away my guns. All right, I'm not yelling into the abyss. I am trying to talk to you. Understand the words I am saying. What is it? the words that are coming out of my mouth. Like, I'm talking about these things for a reason. You are not actually listening. If I am yelling into a void, the void is inside your hollow skull where my voice is echoing around because you are not absorbing the thoughts that I am saying. Okay, it's funny. Okay. All right. So, friendly reminder that we are one soul split into 8 billion parts. Any damage? Okay. This is not, we're not talking about immigrants and millions of, I'm sorry, just the anti-immigrant stuff doesn't need to ban okay. Ban $0 bail, stop reducing sentencing on repeat offenders, especially. I don't know what that has to do with gun control. Can we keep the topic to gun control? There's plenty of things we can talk about. Let's keep it to gun control. All right. So this is the problem. All right. Now let's talk about, this is my favorite dumb argument. This is the dumbest NRA argument, the dumbest anti-gun control argument that I hear it all the time. It's like just a mantra. Guns don't kill people, people kill people. All right. First of all, the problem with that is it's a straw man. It is an absolute straw man. Absolutely nobody is arguing that guns come to life and run out and shoot people. Like, nobody is arguing guns don't kill people, or that guns do kill people. I'm sorry. Nobody's arguing that animated guns take on a life of their own and kill people. But the funny part about this is people kill people. Like, they are admitting that people kill people. And so tacitly, they are accepting that people are using guns to kill people, right? Yes, people kill people in other ways too. We, as a nation, have a higher murder rate than every other Western civilization, or at least every other, like of the, whatever they call it, the wealthy nations. We have by far the highest murder rate because we have by far the most guns. We have, I don't know if you know this, we have 48% of the privately owned guns in the entire world. And of that 48%, or 46%, I'm sorry, of the privately owned guns in the entire world, of that 46%, 23%, or half of the 46%, owns, or I'm sorry, let me phrase this a different way. Of those, of the 48 million, I think it's 3% of Americans own 23% of the world population, or the privately owned guns in the world. 3% of America's population, they're called super gun owners, that own 8 guns or more, own nearly a quarter of all the privately owned guns in the world. We have more access to guns than anybody else in the world, and we have the easiest access to guns of any Western nation, and we have the highest murder rate of any Western nation. Don't you think those things might be connected? Like, maybe we've swung too far in the wrong direction. Maybe we've made it too easy to get weapons that are too dangerous. And I'm not just talking about mass shootings. We have 45,000 people killed a year. Maybe we need to look at what our gun control laws are. You've got a president ready to start a war on fentanyl deaths, which is people overdose. Like, there's 75,000 people that overdose. People don't just overdose on fentanyl. And we're ready to go to like war, a made-up war with other countries over just a few deaths in a few years, relatively. We've had 1 million people die just in the last 20 years. And you're like, well, that's okay. I've got a Second Amendment right. I'm not begrudging anybody who's not murdering people's right to have guns. I'm begrudging the fact that we can't keep the guns out of the people who want to murder people. And that we don't have a strict enough enforcement measure to maintain that nationally. We need to improve our gun control laws. I am not saying ban guns. I am saying there is clearly something broken, and we clearly need to examine what we're doing because we are clearly not doing it right. Let's just stop with all the partisan rhetoric. This is not a Democrat versus Republican thing. We have there lots of Democrats own guns, and lots of Republicans choose not to. You don't have to own a gun, and you shouldn't have to own a gun in order to not be murdered. And you shouldn't have to murder people in order to not be murdered. I don't want to be put in a position where I have to like pull out my gun and shoot somebody, or I'm going to get shot. Like, let's be flexible in our thinking and think, how about we just focus on keeping guns out of the hands of the dangerous people? And stop with all this, well, if you take away everybody's guns, only the dangerous people will have them. No. The whole point of gun control is that people kill people. And so let's take the guns away from the people that kill people. That is what gun control is all about. That's why that whole guns don't kill people do. Kill people. Like, that's stupid. It's the opposite of what you're thinking it means. If people kill people, why are you giving the people that kill people guns? Okay, so somebody says, okay, how? I agree. I agree that the discussion should be about how. And I think that's like a very nuanced discussion, and I think that we need to start having that nationally. And I have ideas on what that should be. I don't have anything prepared for this show, and I'd have to do more research on that. But let's just right now, I just want to talk about whether we need to refine our laws, whether we need to have better gun control laws. I think that we need to do things like close loopholes in background checks. I think we need to do things like not have such disparity between states, so that like in Chicago, I think it's like 30% of the guns that are used in murders in Chicago are bought in Indiana, because Indiana has so much strict, so much looser gun control laws. And I like none of the guns that are bought in Chicago or used in Chicago are bought in Chicago because Chicago has really strict gun control laws. You can't buy a gun in Chicago, but they're used in Chicago. But it's people have cars, and you get gun rights act or anti-gun rights activists and the NRA folks that sit there and go, "Oh, see, it doesn't work in Chicago," as though people are like stationary. And yes, some people are not legally allowed to own a gun. So how do we make the laws and improve laws so that people who aren't allowed guns don't actually have them? And not everybody that shoots somebody is not allowed to own a gun. So let's look into that too. Okay, I'm just right now, buddy, all I'm talking about is let's talk about solutions. Are you okay with the current situation where 45,000 people every year die from gunfire? Are you okay with that? Do you think that we shouldn't have any improvements at all? Like, because right now we're not talking about taking away people's guns or whatever, and people get all emotional and panicky that we're going to take away their little steel penis. It's not entirely accurate. I think like New Hampshire is pretty New Hampshire is kind of different. Not all not all blue states have loose gun laws, and I don't think I think generally speaking, yes, red states have looser gun laws, but I'm talking about let's have a national program. Let's have a federal program where things are harder for people to get guns, and also the types of guns they have. And I'm not just talking about ARs or something like that. Like there are guns and there are things that are features in guns that are designed for killing lots of people. They aren't designed for defending yourself or shooting deer. I've been to Indiana. Yes, we already have federal background checks, and they're not working. Like there's too many easy ways to buy guns without getting a federal background check. So let's look at that. Let's find a way where people can buy a secondhand gun and still have to clear a federal background check. Like, one idea I have is that you have to like have everybody that wants to buy a gun, just independent of buying a gun, gets like a gun purchaser's ID. And if you want to go buy a secondhand gun, you have to show the person that's selling the gun your ID, and then they have to check that against, they just enter in the number and they confirm that you're cleared to buy a gun still, in case, like a court order terminated it. But right now we have all kinds of problems with the background checks. The Congress hasn't funded, hasn't given enough funding for us to keep up on the number of background checks we need to do. So a lot of times people end up clearing the background checks that shouldn't. There are, I think, what is it? There's a lot of people that actually do fail the background checks. So a lot of guns are prevented by the background checks, but a lot of people get through it too. Like, can we have the conversation honestly? Like, really, this is what bothers me about the whole gun control conversation, is people don't want to have a conversation. They want to have an argument. And the people that are most polarized on it want to have the fiercest arguments. This guy gets triggered easily. Watch out, people. He's okay. Indiana is close enough. Indiana is like literally over a bridge from Chicago. We can own. Yes. You are stupid. Okay, well, at least you had tried to avoid the apostrophe. The fact is the status quo isn't working, and it's not. We need to find ways to improve. 45,000 people a year dying are too many. If you're worried about fentanyl deaths, if you're worried about CDL deaths, if you're worried about people being murdered by immigrants, then be worried about guns. Like, we can do better. Why is that such a hard thing to grasp? Why does that have to be a thing we argue over? Why does that have to be a thing where we insult you? I don't want you murdered. I don't want people murdered. I didn't want Charlie Kirk murdered. And I don't want Ron Reiner murdered. Okay, if they're all owned by legally owned guns, then doesn't that tell you that we need to change what the laws are? That's my point. Let's look at what the laws are. Let's look at what legally owned guns are. What guns can be owned and who can own those guns. This is the issue. If people that are murdering people and doing mass shootings are legally buying guns and then going out and shooting bunches of people, let's change the laws. Not just say, oh, well. Okay. No, you're not going to be able to. I've already went through this. You're not going to be able to prevent people from crossing the border illegally, regardless. So what's the point? That's your argument. Is the same logic. Why have laws if people are going to break them? That's your logic. That's not an argument. How many die in auto accidents? Banned cars. Yeah, we've already been through that. People die in car accidents, but we have seatbelts, we have speed limits, we have like DUI laws. We have things that limit the number of auto deaths. I am not saying ban guns again. Why are you talking about banning? I'm not talking about banning anything. I'm talking about regulating. Okay, yeah. I don't think that Jesus had guns. Okay, yeah, dumb Van Ox. Yes. All right. Okay. Let's go to the next one. The next argument is always, when it comes to the mass shootings, especially, you always have people argue it's not the guns, it's just insane people, it's crazy people. Let's talk about mental illness. Okay, first off, with all that, why is it you're only concerned about mental health issues when it comes to gun arguments? Like, what do you want to do about mental illness? Is this something that you ever talk about outside of the context of mental illness? But apart from that, it's also not true that all the people that do it are crazy. There are now, the majority of people that carry out mass shootings die in the commission of it, either because they get shot or they kill themselves. But of those that actually go to trial and stand trial, only about half, I think it's like 30 out of 61, even plead guilt or plead not guilty by reason of insanity. Like, only half of them even plead mental issues, right? Of those that do, less than 2% actually win on that defense. So most people that carry out mass, and there's reasons that they don't win and that they don't plead. One of which is the planning of it shows a mental acuity. So these aren't just people that don't know right from wrong. They're not mentally ill, and so they're doing it. They're bereaved. They're angry. They have mental instabilities, perhaps, but they're not crazy and they're not clinically insane. Number one, it's just not true. And number two, the people that do it, that we have mental issues in other countries. Why don't people in England with mental issues go out and do mass shootings? Why not in Japan? Why is Australia the first one they had in 30 years? Why is it in countries where they practice more stringent gun control, they don't have mass shootings, and they do have mental illness, but in the United States, where we have mental illness and mass shootings, why is it different here? Are we just a more insane society? Are we a society that's more crazy? We watch the same movies, we watch the same TV shows, we play the same video games. What's different about America? Yes, and there occasionally there are mass murderers or whatever, but nothing on the same scale, the same scope, the same frequency. You didn't have somebody go and shoot and stab like 500 people in a few minutes, like you did with the Vegas shooting. These false equivalences, or this is going back to the perfect is the enemy of good argument. And you notice, like, they'll jump around from one argument to another. You'll put down one, and it's like the hungry hedgehog, and they pop up, and you got to pop that one down too. Sorry. Yes, there are mass stabbings. All the mass stabbings in the world combined don't compare with like 1 year's worth of mass shootings in the United States. Your mass stabbing argument is a fallacy. Okay. Yes, I know it doesn't. That's why I drew a distinction between being mentally ill and clinically insane. But again, the majority of mentally ill people do not go out and shoot people. The problem is people have access to guns. Again, This is the problem. Gun control is about who should have access to guns. That's all it is. Do you think that people that are inclined to go out and do mass shootings should have access to guns? Yes or no? I don't. I think we should be able to find a way to do a better job of screening people before they go out and just murder a bunch of people. I do not own a gun. I don't see why that's irrelevant or why that's relevant. I don't think you should have to own a gun in order to determine whether or not crazy people should, or whether or not people that are inclined to murder people should have guns. Like, that's kind of a dumb argument. I asked how many people did the and how many people? Somebody said that, okay, he killed the exact number of people shot in the Vegas shooting was 473. There were 413 injured and 60 killed. I did not say that there were 500 murdered. I said there was 500 shot. Okay, buddy, you're yapping and you're just okay. You're not listening if that's the case. Like, answer the question. Do you think that anybody should be restricted from owning guns? I say that the guns are everybody has problems. I can say the guns are everybody has problems. I'm not sure. My brother got killed because his father left his gun loaded. A police. I'm not sure what that means. Isn't your brother's father your father? Or is it like your stepbrother? Guns make them feel important. Yeah, I do know something about guns. I was in the military. I've fired guns before. I just don't own one. And I don't think that knowing about guns means anything. Like, you don't have to be an expert in guns to have an opinion on whether or not people should be able to use them to murder people. This dude is circumcised. Yes, I am. Not sure how that's relevant. But if you really want to know, yes, I am. I was a baby. Okay, that by that logic, women can't complain when men oppose abortion. No, that is not the same logic. Because I'm not opposed to you owning a gun. I am not opposed to anybody owning a gun unless they are a danger to public safety. I think that there are certain people that should not have guns. I have no idea where you got that men should be able to determine whether or not women have a right to an abortion, because I think that people that are I don't think convicted felons should have guns. Do you think that violent criminals should have guns? Do you think that terrorists should have guns? When you have half the privately owned guns in the entire world, you have too many firearms in the United States. But saying there is no way to stop, again, this goes into unless you have a perfect solution, you can't do anything at all. That's just a fallacious argument. Okay. You can go back and review the first 30 minutes of this podcast. The Second Amendment is not what you think it is. The Second Amendment is not a reason that we can't control who has guns and who doesn't. Even Heller acknowledges that. And Heller has its own problems. How do you determine is a person is a danger to public safety before they? That's a good question, and this is like this is. I think you meant this to be like rhetorical, but actually I think it's a good question. How can we? What can we do to improve? What can we do to actually analyze? Is there something we can do? Like, like, what about red flag laws? Somebody is, there are certain instances where people legally bought guns, but there were warnings, there were indications they hadn't committed any crimes yet, but there were indications that they were going to be a danger, and they bought guns and then they killed people, but there weren't laws that let us stop them beforehand. Like, I think that was the case with the Parkland shooter. And so they, in Florida, to their credit, at least temporarily, they passed laws to address that. But we need national laws along those lines. Like, let's have the conversation instead of an argument. What can we do? Like, let's not make it about, oh, you're trying to take my guns away, or let's take your guns away. Like, this argument is like 5% versus 5%. I am not saying take away everybody's gun. If you're not a criminal and you're not a wife beater and you're not a terrorist, I'm not for taking away your guns. Stop protecting your guns. I'm not coming for yours, and nobody wants them. What we want is to feel safe. I want to be able to go to the grocery store. Like, this is not, remember, I live in Elgin, Texas. And a few years ago, there was the cheerleader that got shot. Remember that? I don't know if you remember that. My wife was in that parking lot about 10 minutes before that cheerleader. Like, we are way too close. Like, we have too much gun violence. Like, why is that even an argument to be had? Why do we have to have an argument about whether we should be doing something when we should be talking about what we can do? How can we improve our gun laws? Okay, no, divorced. She divorced the father because my brother was 11 years old and her husband was fooling around with another girl. Okay. So that's the guy that the police officer dad. Okay, peaceful, not smoker. Yeah, like I said, violent felons. Yes, you can do things other than bolstering security at locations that are soft targets. And how many soft targets are there? How much security are you going to pay for? Who's going to pay for all this security? There are all kinds of countries that manage to do this without living in a virtual police state. I don't want to have armed people everywhere I go. And a lot of times, even armed security, like in a lot of these school shootings, for instance, the security guard that they have there, the armed person they have there, is the first one shot. Because they're not stupid. But these people come in, they're wearing full body armor, and they have a much more dangerous weapon. And they're shooting. And then on top of that, you have other dangers that come with that, where you have to trust that security guard to not misuse their weapons. So, like, having armed security guards everywhere in the country is both expensive and probably counterproductive. Do gun control. Who has guns? Do control who has guns. They have to go through a background check every time. It's none of your business. They don't have to go through every time. They actually only have to go through it if they're buying a brand new gun. There are some states that have closed the loophole, but for a lot of states, you can go and you can buy a secondhand gun without having to get a background check. I mean, now technically you can say, well, it's illegal. It is illegal to buy a gun without a background check. Or if you're a felon, like you're not in a violent felon. Like there's people that are not legally allowed to buy guns, but it's funny that the people that are sitting there saying, "Oh well, if you have gun control, the only people that will have guns are the criminals." And here you're asking the criminal to be the person whose job it is to make sure they're following the law. What if we did this? What if we made it a felony to sell someone a gun that is a felon? Or someone that can't clear a background check? What if we put the onus of the law on the person that actually follows the law, instead of putting the onus of the following the law on the person that has been convicted of breaking it? Like, why is that hard? Horrible things happen, but we are not governed by what criminals and horrible people do. No, but that's why we have laws, right? Okay, that's horrible things happen, but we're not governed. Okay, so should we just do away with murder laws? Should we just make it okay to commit murder because we're not governed by what criminals and horrible people do? Like, how does that make, like, where is the logic in this argument? Okay, the gun laws don't need to be improved. The people in the 80s, there were guns in every okay, first of all, I grew up in the 80s and never once saw somebody come to school with a gun rack. And B, Columbine wasn't too long after I graduated from high school in 85. C, we didn't have nearly as many guns, period, in the 80s. And we did have mass shootings, but mass shootings have gone up, and they didn't go up because of gun control laws. They like to steal guns. Yes. So for instance, here's another thing. All right. People steal guns, right? How about we make it a law that you have to report your gun stolen? And if somebody steals your gun and that gun is used in a shooting and then you didn't report that gun, then you can be charged with the crime too. Yes, it's illegal to, I don't know what you're referring to. It's illegal to buy a gun secondhand if you are a felon. It is not illegal to sell a gun to somebody who it is illegal to buy one unless you know they're a felon. You can't knowingly sell a gun, but you can not check. You can just not be aware of it. You can plausible deniability it. Yeah, common sense needs to make a comeback, and it needs to start with saying, let's improve our laws. Yeah, I'm not ready to have, I don't care if volunteer, I'm a veteran too. I don't care. Veterans are willing to devote their time to go and defend the HEB or the grocery store near them. I don't want to live in an armed state. I don't want to have to go through and have, like the same gravy seals who are tackling immigrants, defending my life at HEB. What you guys are missing about the whole secondhand gun thing, there's no background check required. Like, for a secondhand gun, you don't have to do a background check. So if you don't do a background check and the person would have failed it, you don't know they would have failed it. You don't have to. If you do not know that they are a felon, you are not committing a crime. I don't know how hard that is for you, but apparently it's very hard. So let's make it so that you have to do the background check on them. In some states, they've done that. And in those states, it's actually helped. No, I think the neo-Nazis are running the government now. Yes, you do. Okay. Yes, but what are the penalties for it? Like, this is, in some states it may be, I don't think there's a federal law that you have to report a stolen gun. There may be some places where there are, I'm not sure. But what are the penalties for it? I'm saying in these cases, let's make the law something that you have to that you're more you're going to follow. How many guns that are used in killings are actually stolen? And it was. Yes, I am vaccinated. Criminals don't follow the law. That's right. Nobody is saying they do. I have no idea why you think that's relevant to this conversation. No, I have never bought a gun. I don't think that I need to buy a gun to have an opinion on what gun control laws should be. Yes. Okay, I'm happy to be wrong and to be told, but let's have the conversation about what gun legislation should be. Because what we have is not working. If you can prove me wrong, fine. I'm willing to learn. But what's happening is not working. I am not asking, let's improve the laws. I'm not talking about specifics. And I even said, I need to do research on this. I need to look at it. I'm not going to die on a hill on something that I'm just I've thought of. But, if I'm wrong about, selling a gun on a background check, then I'm wrong. I'm not sure I am, but if I am, that's not really the essential part of the point I'm making. The point I'm making is we can improve our gun legislation laws so that we don't have 45,000 people a year getting murdered. Yes, there is absolutely a loophole for background checks. There is that is not lying. That is you not knowing what you're talking about right there. Let's improve our people first. So what you're saying is that every other country in the world has better people. If our murder rate is higher than England or Germany or Australia or Japan or China or all those other places where they have gun control, do they have better people than us? I'm happy to. I'm doing research. What is okay? I am fearful and okay. No, I don't think AR means assault rifle. Yes, criminals break laws by definition. Why? I don't know why you keep going on about criminals. I am saying that anyway. I don't want to live with cucks like you, so my wife's fidelity is the issue here. You already lived in an armed state. Get over it. Arm yourself to yeah. Poor guy is so delusional and is as educated. Just because all these shootings, y'all want to grab more guns. Okay, whatever. All right, so I'm just kind of skipping down. Most of this is just people yelling stuff. Gun deaths are lower today than they aren't. There may be somebody said there's gun deaths are lower than they were in the 70s. But that's a bit they've been going up for years now. They came down for a while. They're going back up. And the reason deaths were in the just like with the war in the Gulf, part of the reason there are fewer deaths is nothing to do with guns. It has to do with medicine. Like, we've gotten better at saving people. I'm not sure if there's more people or fewer people being shot, but I'll be happy to look into that for you and see if I'm right. I think that part of the reason there are fewer deaths is that we are saving more people that are shot. Regardless, 45,000 people getting shot every year is too many. Like, oh, it was worse in the 70s doesn't mean that it's okay now. Nobody's saying that. So then why have them? Background checks. There are actually, how many people? I don't want to speak. Just looking this up. Okay, how many guns are denied through background checks? In 2020, approximately 398,000 guns purchases were denied due to background checks. So clearly, a lot of people that are trying to buy guns are getting denied by background checks. I'm assuming some of those are criminals. So yes, they are helping. You have to look at murder rate by state. Even that can be, there's other variables. And access, like a state can have certain gun control laws, but people can buy these things. They're called cars that, transport them to another state. It's like a magical thing. There's already a law that you have to report your gun stolen. Yes, we've addressed this. You prove you wrong. Okay. And then only works if there's an illegal gun registry, which there already is. THERE. And yes, for those that don't realize background. I mean, they actually do prevent people from getting guns that shouldn't have them. Like, as I just said, 398,000 in 2020. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna look this up. Like Texas, where I live, there is no reporting law for being stolen. Like I said, it's by state. There's not a federal law. There's not a national law that you have to report it. And then for most of in Washington State, it's a civil fine of up to $1,000 for failing to report theft within 24 hours. Some states, like Texas, have no mandatory reporting laws, while others might have different requirements and penalties. It doesn't seem like there's any that have like criminal penalties for it. And my point is, let's make for those where you have them, then make the penalty serious enough that people take the law seriously. Shall not be infringed. I already covered shall not be infringed. Okay, get better medicine. AR-15s are the most common used platform in mesh. Yes, I don't know why you're talking about AR-15s. I haven't talked about AR-15s at all. We have background checks. Again, we don't have background checks for secondhand guns. Some states do, some states don't. There is no federal law that you have to have a background check if you're buying a secondhand gun. This is not true again. It's not about mental health because, again, other countries have mental health problems. They do not have mass shootings. What is it about the United States that makes it the only place where mental health issues matter? I'm not even going to go into that weirdo stuff. Gun control making, no, it doesn't. And again, I don't know how many times I have to say this. I am not against taking away the guns of law-abiding citizens. I'm not. Gun control is not about taking away the guns of law-abiding citizens. If you can't have that conversation, like, do you think that non-law-abiding people should be able to buy guns? Put it that way. Do you think terrorists should be able to buy guns? Do you think violent felons should be able to have guns? If your answer to that question is no, then do you think that we should do a better job of screening for those people? That's all. How about a fishing license, have them work on sold the gun or not? I'm sorry, I don't understand. How about like a fishing license, have them work on sold the gun or not? Yeah, they're not allowed to buy the gun if they fail it. But one of the issues that we have with background checks right now, other than the second-hand loophole, there's also a limit on how many days you have to wait. And I think can't remember. There's an incident recently where this was the thing where if the background check isn't completed in time, then you can go and buy the gun whether you passed it or not. And they've underfunded the people that are doing it, so there's not enough people doing background checks, so there's backlog. And so then a lot of people that shouldn't be able to pass background checks end up being able to buy guns even though they can't pass a background check. Okay, this is only for new guns. Anytime you buy a gun, sell a gun, or even make a gun, it has to be through federally licensed dealer who does FBI background checks on the customer. That's not true. That is a factually wrong statement. Okay, there are too many guns in the United States. We have half the guns, like roughly half the privately owned guns in the entire world. And less than like 0.1% of the population of the world owns 23% of the privately owned guns in the entire world. That's a problem. See, he don't want to comment on something that's true. Anybody called Trump for Life 79 is not saying something true. It's an exemption listed in the Brady Check law, an international exemption for private sales, an intentional exemption for private sales. Yes. Proof that compromises from Second Amendment leads to more ban restrictions. It's absolutely about mental health. Yes. It's not about mental health. There are people that have mental health issues other places. Obviously, if anybody's going to go and shoot a bunch of people, they have mental issues, right? That does not mean everybody that has mental issues wants to go and shoot people. And that, of all things, means that you need to be able to figure out which people that have mental health issues that want to go and shoot people shouldn't have guns to go and shoot people with. The question, again, is not whether or not, a normal person with no health issues, no criminal record should be able to buy guns. Go for it. The question is whether or not the people that are dangerous should have guns. Why is it? I'm honestly, can somebody on the other side just say, hey, I don't think that people that are dangerous should have guns, just so I know you hear what I'm saying, because that is all I am saying. If you agree that people that are dangerous should not have guns, then you agree with gun control, and that the whole conversation is how do we keep the guns out of the hands of dangerous people without keeping them out of the hands of people who are not dangerous. That's what gun control is. It's about who has guns, not about whether anyone has guns. Okay, the whole mental health issue thing, yes, we need to have much more conversation about mental health issues. It is a separate conversation from whether or not dangerous people should have guns. Someone that's not dangerous today could be very dangerous tomorrow. Yes. This goes back into the, if you're not going to stop everybody, why stop anybody conversation? Some people, 398,000 people in 2020 were denied by background checks. Why should we just give them guns too? Should we just let anybody that wants one have one, because somebody might get one that might someday become dangerous? I'm not willing to let the government or you determine who is dangerous. Okay. Then you're dangerous. If the government is not keeping the hands out of dangerous people, then that is dangerous. So that makes you dangerous. Who decides what's dangerous? The people do. Not yes. So you think that if somebody walks into Walmart with the intention of killing everybody and just yells, hey, I'm a terrorist, give me an AR-15 and 200 rounds of ammunition, you're just like, hey, not my job to decide if you're dangerous. This dude is a tyrant. He wants everybody to agree with him. This is like not a thing I've said. Japan doesn't let civilians own guns. They have 3 knife violences in 2024. The U.S. Yeah, I mean, it's like some of this stuff. Oh, well, you're going to have mass stabbings. Dude in Vegas wasn't going to go and stab 473 people and kill 60 of them in a space of 15 minutes. Now the 3-time felon gangbanger. I don't know who that is or what you're talking about. We already have common sense. We don't have enough gun control because we have 45,000 people a year being shot and killed. So obviously we need to do better. Okay, who is considered dangerous? So not trusting the government makes us dangerous. I think not having letting anybody who wants to own a gun is dangerous. Advocating for that is a dangerous position. So yes, in that context, it makes you dangerous. It makes your idea dangerous. It does not mean I think you should be locked up and thrown away. I think it makes you wrong. I think it makes you deliberately ignorant. I think it makes you naive. I think it makes you a fool. But I don't think it makes you, I don't think that being stupid should be a crime. But I don't think that being stupid should also be legislated. I think that dangerous people shouldn't have guns. You're allowed to think what you think, and I'm allowed to think what I think. But what you think is dangerous, because what you think enables people who are dangerous to have guns. Okay. Why is it always the manufacturer? That is a very good point, and I think we need to look more at, like, I think there's some people that are saying, well, gun manufacturers should be liable for mass shootings, because I think what happens is you get, like even with the, with the assault weapons ban, assault weapons sales actually went up slightly after that. Once it removed, they went completely derailed. But the manufacturers just, tweak to tweak and here and there, and they managed to work around the law, so they actually went up a little bit. So I think making it so that you have, I think we need to look at the laws again, and I think one thing we can do is make it so that gun manufacturers that sell guns that are could reasonably be conjectured to be used in mass shootings should be liable for those mass shootings. You don't get to sell a gun and like bump stock and 200 round mags of 200 round magazines or whatever. I don't know what the 150, 200. And sell all that and then be like, oh, I can't believe somebody would use all that in a mass shooting. Obviously, what else are you going to need? You're going to use a 250 rounds. Why do you need to shoot 150 rounds in a couple of minutes? Why do you have a barrel that can absorb that much, that can handle that much heat? Why do you have to have special barrels and special pistol mounts and stuff like that to hold the heat from firing so many bullets in such a short period of time? You're not doing that for Bambi, and you're not doing that for self-defense. Now, a lot of times it's just for somebody like Ted Cruz to go and fry bacon or whatever. Can't remember what it was. He's like, oh, Ted Cruz, that little wuss. Anyway. No, it's not because you don't want me deciding what your rights are. I'm not trying to change your rights. I'm saying what's dangerous is the very notion that anybody should be able to go out and murder people anytime they want by going and getting a gun at Walmart. And I never said you should. Why is it you're one of those people that has to like change what people say in order to frame your argument? So that makes you dishonest too. See that? No. Expressing your freedom of speech does not make you dangerous. There's all kinds of speech that's not dangerous. Anyway. I'm scrolling down here, trying to. I'm scrolling down and scrolling over some comments when I get too backed up, because then the conversation gets behind. I haven't said anything that's misinformation. So I'll make a straw, and somebody. No. Okay, I haven't said anything that's not true. If you want to cite for me what federal law there is against A secondhand background check. Go ahead, quote it for me. Just post it there in the mentions. If you want to show for me the federal law against that says you have to report your your gun stolen, go ahead and post it in the comments. Otherwise, just admit I'm right. I am not giving you disinformation. You are just unable to hear and let things that you don't know penetrate your gun-addled brain. Really, the mouth is the most dangerous weapon? Yes. Sure, whatever. Okay, no semis at Walmart. Excuse me, I don't know where to go buy a semi. The point remains the same. You shouldn't be able to go and buy a gun that's going to kill a bunch of people if you're planning to kill a bunch of people with it. Why is that so hard? Trump is a fascist in America and you maggots don't care. Yes, and yet here you are insisting you know what the laws are and you're wrong about them. Post the laws. Post the U.S., post the U.S. law. Post the law or just stop. Okay, I'm not absolutely wrong. Okay, sorry. There are some that agree with me too. They have more bullets than they have brain cells. See? So give them money for more checks that criminals clearly aren't abiding by. Okay, how do you know that criminals aren't abiding by them? Because criminals are failing the background checks, which means the laws are working. So maybe we need to give them more money so that we can keep more criminals from buying guns. Yes, I don't know the laws that don't exist. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the next thing. We've been stuck here. They're coming to take our guns. This one we've basically been through. And I really wish people would just listen to this. The whole they're coming to take our government. There's so many of the comments are about this kind of logic. Nobody's coming to take away your guns. If you are not a felon and you are not someone that would be subject to a red flag law, like there's not a restraining order against you from your wife or whatever. There are all kinds of ways we can talk about what constitutes a threat, what constitutes a danger. And I would be happy to actually have that conversation about what we can do. And I'd be happy to listen to you. I would love to hear your ideas. What do you think constitutes a danger? But it's so much of the other side of this is just that we shouldn't. And I just disagree fundamentally and wholeheartedly with the idea that anybody who wants to buy a gun should be able to buy one. I just don't agree with that. And if you don't agree with that, why are you arguing with me? Because that is all I am saying. Stop trying to change my perspective, but change what I'm saying into a straw man that you can defeat. Do you think that some people shouldn't be able to buy guns? Let's say, anyway. Somebody is accused of murder and they're out on bail. Should they be able to go and buy a gun? Yes or no? If you say no, how would you prevent that? That is gun control. Can we have the honest argument So I haven't seen you flagged by who? Flagged by what? That is gun control. The flagging is gun control. So you're saying that gun control should happen. If they would already be flagged, that means that you agree with gun control. What gun control is not about whether or not people have guns. That's a gun ban, a gun boycott. That's no guns is a gun ban. A gun control is just controlling who has guns and what sort of guns they can have. Biden literally. This literally did not happen. And it didn't figuratively happen either. Okay, because how do we determine who's going to shoot? Yes. How do we? Can we do a better job of that? Like I said, there has actually been cases where people went out and shot a bunch of people, and then we looked and we said, "Oh, there were red flags here." And we determined, and in some states they've passed red flag laws. Do we catch everybody? No, but maybe we can catch some. Like this, oh, if there's ever a mass shooting ever again, then that means that we didn't do it, that we should never do anything ever at all. Trump is a fascist. Okay, there are millions of unregistered guns on the street. So what is your plan to stop a criminal? How about we come up with one? Like, that's gun control. Having a plan to prevent criminals from having guns. That's literally what gun control is. So do you agree we should have a plan? Then you're arguing for gun control. Nobody's coming here to take her guns. We just need to ignore Democrats openly saying on live TV that they are going to. Democrats aren't saying that on live TV. And no bills are being proposed which would come for your guns. Like, this is not happening. We can do a better job of letting criminals back into population like government is. I don't know what that means. Where do the most non-suicide gun deaths occur? It's not in free areas. Hint, it's not. Are you talking about gun-free zones? Gun-free zones is a whole different, like, mass shootings happen in gun-free zones because gun-free zones are places where mass shootings are also the most likely to occur, which is why they're gun-free zones. Like, I don't know what that's what you're trying to talk about. What about the people who are falsely accused under? I think that, okay, I don't know what people are being falsely accused under red flags that lose their rights. I think that there needs to be a judicial process where they have a right to have a hearing, but I think there needs to be a process. I think in places where there are ones, there is a judicial process. You can't just go in and say, "Oh, he's a threat," and then have their rights taken away. I don't know if that's true or not. I'll look into it. But I don't think you can just accuse. I think that if somebody comes in and red flags you, then they have to actually prove that there's a reason to do it. Like the onus is on them to prove that you're a threat, not on you to prove you're not one. And I think that has to involve like not a lawyer trying to lawyer the way out of it. They have to like actually have like prove that there's actual reasons, and especially if there's no crimes committed or anything, like there has to be like a psychological exam and things like that. I'm under the impression that's the case, but I haven't read on that in a few years. It may be outdated, but I'm pretty sure you can't just go and decide you're going to get somebody's guns taken away by going out and filing a false police report. And if you do, by the way, if you were to go and just say that about somebody, then that would be illegal. So if you're going to talk about crimes and criminals and stuff like that, then that's a crime. And so that's already illegal. You cannot tell me Democrats are not coming for our guns when people like Kamala Harris say they are going to do a mandatory gun buyback. She didn't say they were going to do a mandatory gun buyback. I'm sorry, Kelly. Or Democrats openly saying I'm coming. Okay. I think there's maybe Beto said something about a buyback for AR-15s, but in general, there's not like this, and that's a specific type of gun. Like, and that's actually to solve a problem, and that still falls in the venue of gun control, because as I've been saying, who can have a gun and what kind of gun they have. I think that while I think that AR-15s and assault rifles are a big part of the problem, I don't see a way to solve that very well, other than make the gun manufacturer responsible for it. Yes, you can ask me a question, but that counts as the question. Non-U.S. citizens about our laws. Are they Russian? Let me guess. He's a Nazi. No, I said he's a fascist, not a Nazi. And he is. I mean, I have several episodes that like break down what fascist means and how he is exactly a fascist. I'm not using that word hyperbolically. I'm not using it as a smear. I'm using it as an actual descriptive term. His policies and his actions are fascist. That's not, and people call me a communist all the time. It doesn't make me a communist, but he is a fascist. I've had people call me a commie in this show just because I think that I've said that, like some people shouldn't have guns. Actually, you know what? This is ahistorical. Hitler actually made it easier for people to have guns, unless you were Jewish. But there were gun control laws that he actually reversed. It was easier to get a gun unless you were Jewish, it was easier to get a gun under Hitler. Yes, we shouldn't disarm law-abiding citizens and give government more power. I literally have said over and over again, I have no problems with law-abiding citizens having guns. No, it is not literally how Nazi Germany started. And that's not what the word literally means either. But it's not. Like, it's not. I know that's what the NRA tells you, but it is not how Nazi Germany started. And it is not what the Nazis did. Passed the law for fish and wildlife, where they did get the gun from the number down. The gun did they sell the... I'm sorry, Barbara. I do not understand what your punctuation would help. I'm not trying to be mean and saying that. This is a little word salad. Okay, answer the question. How would you stop the criminals from getting guns off the street? I don't know. I think we should have that discussion, though. I don't know the answer to that question. But I know the answer isn't... I know that the question isn't an answer. Like, this is not a rebuttal to gun control. This is an argument for gun control. The fact that criminals have guns on the street is why we need gun control. It's not why we don't need gun control. So let me ask you, how would you stop the criminals from getting guns? Do you think that we should sell criminals guns? I'm sure criminals won't break the laws and get guns illegally. I'm sure they won't. I'm sure they will. But again, why do we have laws at all? We're not going to prevent murders. Why make murder illegal? That the idea that people will break the laws if we have the laws is kind of point. If we didn't have any laws at all, if nothing was illegal, then nobody would be a criminal. The only reason we have criminals is because we have laws. So this idea of I'm sure criminals won't break the laws and get guns illegally kind of misses the point. They're criminals because they break laws. That doesn't mean we get rid of laws. It means we figure out how to enforce the laws we have. This is something, people don't have guns to defend themselves. So I looked this up. This is actually, there's about, the best case scenario, best estimates are that there's about 65,000 defensive gun uses a year. Some of that might, some people think that might be low. Some people think that might be high, but that's the most respected number. But again, I have no issues with people owning guns to defend themselves. I have no problem with people having guns that aren't a danger. Like, I don't know why the question always has to come back to taking away people's guns or not letting people buy guns, that I don't have an issue with owning guns. It's not always either or. Finished your thought for you, but that's not my thought. Like I said, I have no problems with people having guns as long as they're not a danger. But for some reason, like when I say, look, I have no problem with people that aren't dangerous having guns. And then you say, why are you trying to take away my gun? Why would I want to take away your gun if I just said I don't have problem with people who aren't dangerous having guns? You're telling me you're dangerous. Look at, there's no, do you know the difference between correlation and causation? Correlation does not mean causation. We have, if you look at a standard, just if you look at a standard chart showing shark attacks and ice cream sales in Florida, you will notice that they parallel each other. Shark attacks go up at the same time as ice cream sales, and they come down at the same time as ice cream sales. That does not mean people buying ice cream causes sharks to attack, nor does it mean that that sharks attacking is because people buy ice cream. What it means is people go to the beach when it's hot out and they eat ice cream when it's hot out. When people go to the beach, they get attacked by sharks more often. The two things are not related in any way other than they're things that you do in the summer. The same thing applies with gun-free zones. People go to rock concerts like they did in Vegas, or a country music concert or whatever. People go to concerts. There's a bunch of people there, all packed in, which is why you don't want them all walking around with AR-15s. you also had a bunch of sitting ducks waiting to get shot by this one dude. It does not mean that if they all had guns, there would have been fewer people shot. They've done, they've done like trials where they had people that had guns. Like they'll tell people, look, we're gonna set up a classroom environment, and we're gonna give you a gun and we're gonna simulate a mass shooting, and they would know that it was coming, right? And then they'd have the fake mass shooter come in and pull out his gun and start shooting people. Usually when they stood up and to shoot, they were the first one shot. When they were able to get bullets off, usually they shot other people because they weren't ready for it. They weren't prepared. Even like if you're a trained, SWAT guy or something, you have to go through training there's all kinds of stuff. Your blood is pumping and you've got to like control yourself and regulate yourself. Most people are not trained to do this. Occasionally you'll see people that were like there was a guy that stopped a mass shooting, and he was a police guy, and he was an off-duty police detective. So I'm not saying it's never happens or it couldn't happen, but it also could happen that if everybody had guns and they're all pulling out their guns, you don't know. Let's say you got 5 people with guns and they're all pulling their guns out. You don't know if each of those 5 people is with the gunman or trying to stop him. And so you could try to shoot one of them, and then everybody thinks that you're the gunman. So there's just lots of ways this could play out. The idea that if everybody had a gun in a gun-free zone, there wouldn't be any shootings is just dumb. I did not destroy my own argument, and I have no idea where unless you're talking to somebody else. Okay. When I get pulled over, I get my license registration. Yes. And you're illegal? I'm assuming you're not talking about your car. I don't understand why. Again, I have no problems with people legally owning guns. Okay, sure, Lynn. You don't need a lawyer for literally any legal document ever. Just walk in here. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're going to go to somebody's house and take their gun away because you file a report. You are under the impression of a lot of false info. Okay, first of all, it's your YOU''RE under the impression of a 2 words lot of false info. And third, you're under the it doesn't even make sense after. I think you're trying to say that I believe a lot of false information, but you're not saying what is information is false, which maybe you're under the impression of a lot of false info, whatever that means. Don't listen to this moron telling you to take advice from an AI. Trump is not a fascist. He is. Yes, he is. And I'm not having that discussion right now. So, I'm just not. Any human can file a complaint or a notion to charge file, whatever. Yes, anybody can file one. If I go and I file somebody, if I file charges against somebody for assault, if they didn't assault me, they're not like the police aren't just going to say, oh, well, he insulted and then go and lock them up and throw away the key. they're going to investigate it, and then if I didn't assault them, I'm going to be charged with filing a false police report. I am extremely are you a danger to society? That's the question. If you are saying you're a danger to society, are you going to go and shoot up a church? This dude is probably a duty to retreat. MF. Okay, you're are you talking about me? Yes, I would retreat before I killed somebody. There's like, if somebody were to carjack me, for instance, I would let them have my car, because I would rather lose my car, collect the insurance, than have somebody than have to murder somebody or be murdered. Like, I feel like there are solutions that don't involve killing people. That's me. You want to kill somebody, go ahead. If you are not a criminal, you should be allowed to. I don't know how many times I have to say that. I have, but unless there are other exceptions, though, like if you know, there are scenarios where people are threat to themselves or others, where they haven't actually committed a crime. But I think in those situations, typically you need a psychiatrist to examine them and make that determination, and a judge has to hear it, and it has to be reviewed. This Len guy that thinks that you can just go and make up a story, and the judge will like revoke your Second Amendment rights is just wrong. He says that he's got this. He happens all the time on his job. I don't know what he does. Maybe he's a janitor at a court. Yeah, you keep making that claim, and it's not true. Okay, so you have no idea what it takes to get a gun or background checks are. Okay. And again, background checks stop criminals from getting guns, but people get guns without getting background checks. I don't know why. Like, what's the point of talking if nobody listens? No, you haven't heard that. I can tell how good you are at hearing already. I think that you are deliberately misrepresenting things that people said. Yes, I can pass a background check. If the drone with lidar did if the drone with lidar detects your gun and you have a permit for it, it scanned your face, you're good. I say I have no idea what that means. If you want the guns, you get them easy to write checks. Easy to write checks other people have to cash. You can. Your gun control will only. How does gun control limit law-abiding citizens? If I say you should only be able to have a gun if you're a law-abiding citizen, how does that prevent law-abiding citizens from having guns? Like, What sense does that make? Okay. Okay. That's the second question you've asked. And I said, go ahead. I'll give you the next one's on the House. You can ask me one other question. That's two. Okay. Laws aren't laws if you don't get caught. Okay. So murder isn't murder if you don't get caught. So does that mean that the person that was murdered isn't dead? Is the murdered person not dead until you're caught? For So all those people and those two people in Brown University, they're still alive. But I'm not dictating a solution. I'm saying let's look for a solution. Let's just, all I'm trying to say with this entire thing is let's have a conversation about a solution. What do you propose? Because all you're proposing is that we don't have a discussion. Straw man as F, clearly satire of your dumbass policy prescription. I haven't prescribed anything. I'm just saying, let's have a discussion. What would you do? 500,000 defensive uses. No, that's an absolute bogus number. It's lowest. No, that's just not true. If that were true, that would mean like 98% of people that have violent encounters are just like not reporting it, which means that gun owners are a bunch of civilly irresponsible assholes. If I were assaulted by somebody with a gun, then I would, and I were to like manage to prevent that with my gun, and then I were to say, whoa, that was a good thing I got away with that. And I didn't call the police and say, hey, there's some guy running around with a gun assaulting people and trying to, mug people. What does that make me? Like, why aren't they reporting these things to the police if they keep happening? That's like 500,000 a year or 2 million. Like one report in the 90s had it like 2 million. Like just ridiculous numbers. And you go and you look at it and it's like all self-reported, and it's like a gun nutter needs to like explain why he's so badass. No, it's not 250,000. You don't have problems with people defending themselves. No. Then get rid of gun-free zones. No. Those two things are not identical. Do you think that people should be able to go to Donald Trump's rallies with an AR-15? What if the whole audience had AR-15s? Cancel student visa program. I don't know what lidar drones are, what you're talking about here. You'll never fix the problem unless you get rid of guns. I will just say the people who have gotten rid of guns have solved the problem, more or less. Like, I think there were 22 shooting deaths in Great Britain. They didn't have, and like people are like, oh well, they have the stabbings. The homicide rate is still like 1/10 of what ours is. The reason guns were invented, the whole point of guns is it wasn't even to shoot deer. Guns were not invented to shoot animals. Guns were literally invented to kill people. They have been used for other things, but knives weren't even invented to stab people. Guns are the most ubiquitous thing that we have in this country that were specifically designed to shoot people with and to kill people with. So when people talk about swimming pools or cars or whatever, Those things were not designed to murder people with. They were not designed to kill people. Guns were literally designed to kill people. Even if you're using them for defense, you're using them to kill the person who is trying to kill you, probably with a gun. I don't even know what you're talking about. Here's about forced reset trigger. I don't know what forced reset trigger is. I'll look into it. I don't know if that means that people should be able to have guns if they're dangerous criminals, but I have a feeling it's a straw man. Certain people can have guns. Okay, you're just yeah. All these, like Australia, Japan, England, none of these countries have like these issues with the government that you keep talking about, but they've disarmed people. Actually, the Second Amendment, if you want to go back and look at it, Stevie, watch like the first half hour. The Second Amendment does not mean what the Second Amendmenters actually think it does. The Constitution itself was written so that the government could put down insurrections, not to protect us from the government. The Constitution was literally written to protect us from insurrections. Okay. Correlation often leads to causation when analyzed. Correlate. There are times when I just read things that are so stupid that it's really hard to believe that somebody could utter that sentence and think that they made a point. Correlation does not lead to causation. The relationship between two things are correlated. Whether or not one thing causes the other is a separate discussion. But correlation never causes causation. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. We've been defending the first without the second for 250 years. You're literally trying to defend gun-free zones. Okay, just sitting there talking about gun-free zones again. Okay. The correlation with gun-free zones is that they are generally things where people go to where they don't, where they're generally together. Like, I'm not suggesting that a shooting range be a gun-free zone. But there are places like churches. There are places like venues where people like gather together. There's places like schools. There are places where you don't need guns. There's no reason to have a gun there. Okay. That means they're not a gun-free zone. So, I'm talking about where they have gun-free zones. They never had a mass shooting at Brown University until yesterday either. There are free open targets with no way to. So, why not keep the guy that's shooting them from having the gun to shoot them with. I don't think if more guns were the answers, if more guns in more places were the answer, we have as a nation nearly half the guns in the world, half the privately owned guns in the world. And we have the highest murder rate of any Western nation. So maybe the issue is we've got too many guns and not that we don't have enough guns. Okay, stop projecting. So now we've gotten into the whole latte thing. No, I don't. Just again, I don't know what this has to do with anything. Where have I said that you can't have a gun? This guy's still going on about Biden. Anyone feel safe? People stay here in Florida just to go to the groceries. Like, you should not have to arm yourself to go to the grocery store, to go to the movie theater, to go to school. We don't have to have guns everywhere to feel safe. If we have to have guns everywhere to feel safe, it's because we don't feel safe because there are guns everywhere. Okay. If someone has carjacking, you have no idea what they're planning to do. You have no idea what's is attacking you if they forfeit for their life. Okay. That doesn't mean I'm going to kill them. I have 3 letters from ATF. First, threatened me to prison for an item they themselves gave permission. Second, an apology when they lost. Third, better letter to reclaim my lawful property. Okay. Gun control won't work. Felon can carry a black powder revolver and get a conversion kit for it to 9mm for less than $300. And both, yes, there are ways around gun control laws. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have them. People break laws. That does not mean you don't have laws. Another, of course, now we've got to use the R word. But I have never once said, and I've repeated many, many times, I am not against law-abiding people having guns. Nothing. I've never said that you shouldn't. It's the fault of you weak on crime Democrats. Okay. How do you prevent them from having the gun? If they, again, that's good. Let's have that discussion. How can we prevent criminals from having guns? How can we prevent people that have mental issues? You're the guys that are always saying, well, they're crazy people. That's why they're doing it. Okay. How do we prevent the crazy people that are going to do it from having it? Let's have the conversation instead of using these kinds of rhetorical devices to prevent having the conversation. Like, we either should or we shouldn't. You want to prevent them from having the guns or not? Yes, big cities have higher crime rates. That's true whether you have gun laws or not. It's and actually there are higher murder rates in some red states and in some rural areas than there are in some urban areas. The numbers are higher, but sometimes the rates are not. This is neither here nor there. Even if it's like a Democrat run city where the gun deaths are, how can we solve it? Like, how can we have fewer gun deaths? Like, sitting there just saying, oh, well, these people are worse than this people. Okay, how do you solve that? Like, can we have solution oriented conversation about this? That's all I'm asking for. Why is that so hard? Why can't we just talk about a solution instead of just, sorry, I need to get my plug here. Why can't we just have a solution? Why can't we have a conversation about solving the problem instead of just saying why we can't have a conversation at all? Yes, murder is against the law. I don't know. Yes, murder is against the law. Okay, you must be talking about Donald Trump. Don't we already have? I don't know exactly how many gun laws we have. I don't know if it's 20,000. But if we have 20,000 and they're not working, maybe we need to change them. Okay, vote straight Democrat and save America. Okay. People that use the R word, it's like, do you know anybody that has children with Down syndrome? Like, I find the term really offensive, and it's not like a liberal thing or, like woke thing. It's just, when I was in like 5th grade, I was in Weeblos, had a Weeblo leader, Mr. Konkowski. He had a son with Down syndrome. And he was, I think, the same age as me. And he came home in tears because a bunch of bullies were making fun of him and calling him the R word. And this my Weeblos leader was a pretty big guy. Was just in tears. Like, literally, I'm watching a grown man cry because he feels so bad for his son being bullied by, kids that are using the R word against him. And never used the word again after that. I'm just saying. It's an ugly, ugly word. Call me an idiot, call me an asshole, call me a moron. Just don't use that word, please. I'm not saying you have to agree with me. I'm not even worried about being insulted. Got all kinds of people throwing all kinds of insults. But just as a human being, with any kind of decency towards other human beings, understand there are people that have things like Down syndromes and have real mental issues, and being used as a pejorative, having your child used as a pejorative, is really friggin' ugly. Somebody's got a point to make. But non-law abiding people are going to follow the laws? No. That's literally what non-law abiding people are. That does not mean you don't have laws. If people break laws, if you have laws that people break, then you can punish them for breaking the law. If you don't have the law for them to break, you can't punish them for breaking the law. The point of the law is not just to keep people from doing it. The point of the law is that you can do something to people who break it. You make the thing illegal, and then if they do it, then you can fine them, you can arrest them, you can put them in jail. Do you like? I just, it boggles my mind that people, gun control is using two hands. Then you're okay. I don't know why you said that. Okay. I sorry, the whoever you are, that I didn't answer whatever you asked. We have laws about drinking and driving, and more people don't die from that. And again, I've addressed this. We have laws against drinking and driving. Do you know why we have laws against drinking and driving? Because people were dying from that. And you know what happened once we started passing things like open container laws and lowering, like passing drinking and driving laws, and then lowering the blood alcohol content, and fewer people were dying. So we do have laws about drinking and driving. It's not, I mean, and nobody's talking about taking away guns either. It's just like we regulated drinking and driving. We're just saying we have some regulations about who owns guns. We control who owns guns and what kind of guns they have. Like, when you make these arguments like about drinking and driving, do you realize you're actually making an argument for gun control? Like, the reason, like, let me reverse that on you. Do you think that drinking and driving should be illegal because, or we should just make it legal since people drink and drive? If people are going to drink and drive anyway, why make it against the law? Next, he is going to write a book and tell us to buy his book. Okay, Lynn, you're not obligated to be here. Okay, you can marry someone that doesn't have a United States birth certificate, but if you abuse them, you shouldn't have married them. You can marry somebody. Yes, you can marry somebody that wasn't born here, but if you abuse them, you shouldn't have married them. Okay. I'm not quite sure why you're connecting those two things. Okay. Abuse is wrong. There's nothing, you can marry anybody you want. If somebody abuses someone, maybe they shouldn't have married you. Repeat offender, yes. What kind of repeat offenders? Repeat offenders for what? We have laws. We don't need any more laws. Enforce them. Okay, that's what I'm saying. How can we enforce? We should start enforcing the laws we have. Maybe we do need some more laws. Maybe we need to change some laws. Maybe we need to modernize some laws. Maybe we just need to have a conversation about the laws instead of just trying to find excuses to not have a conversation at all. Kids have always been cruel, and I understand that, but I don't understand it when adults do it. When the president of the United States uses the R word, that's like, it's just terrible. When nobody's talking about non-criminals not being able to get guns. I want you to keep saying that we can just keep them out of criminals' hands, but how? Yes, let's have that conversation. How can we keep them out of the hands of criminals? I just want you to know that that's all I'm trying to say. Let's keep them out of the hands of criminals. And let's figure out a way to do that. And keep them out of the hands of people. Like if somebody threatens their wife for leaving and they haven't committed a crime, but the wife has a genuine fear that they're going to shoot them and has a restraining order on them, should that person be allowed to buy a gun? How many, there's like people that actually go out and murder their ex-wives. There are some people that are unhinged but haven't committed a crime. And those unhinged people want to commit crimes with guns. How can we keep them from having guns? What can we do to also protect people that are just being wrongly accused? Those are real conversations to have. Let's not use this as a deflection to not have the conversation. Okay, Magus, watch them go. Bro, these people are justifying killing their kids by saying they want to save their body and bank accounts. These people are irrational. It's like you say, I've said like 100 times in this show, I don't have a problem with law-abiding citizens having guns. And then it's like 30 seconds later, how come you don't want law-abiding citizens to have guns? They don't really seem to be arguing rationally. We've had this conversation like 5 times now. There are ways to get guns without going through a background check. We should ban assault butter. Okay. Bro, we literally banned alcohol. Yeah. Completely different thing. Alcohol was not designed to kill people with. Can the cops have guns? Yes. We should never call a mentally ill kid R for being mentally ill. However, a full-grown adult who should have a semblance of intelligence is acting blank, so you're a bleep. No. Using somebody's mental issues as a slur makes you a dick. Stop being a dick. 40,000 deaths a year from guns. Yeah, that's like, to me, a lot. They had 22 in England last year. Making guns. Who's talking about making guns illegal? Nobody. Stop saying that. Nobody. I have not said make guns illegal. So? Does that mean that we should make drunk driving illegal? I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, you always got to throw in this like just insane thing. Did I say, okay, open borders is completely irrelevant. And I've never said that single moms shouldn't have the right to defend themselves. Like, why do you have to lie? If you have to lie to make an argument, you don't have an argument. Okay. Should we have stricter laws for driving cars? We have. Okay. Always with the car. Let's say every morning we had everybody in a city, or like half the population of the city, go out into a central place and just start shooting guns at each other. Do you think we would have more people dying than people dying in cars? Like, there's so much irrational about this discussion about cars. More people drive, more people spend a lot more time in cars, and more people die by gunfire than in car accidents every year. This is just such a stupid thing to say. Barely 100. That's not true. No, that's not true. So what? And it's not true. Yes. I don't know maybe if that's true or not. But again, it's not really relevant. We have gun laws that are more strict than alcohol. Can you buy a gun if you're under 21? Gun control, gun control was a failure 30 years. No, it wasn't. So what regulations? Good question. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what regulations. Let's actually have that mutual conversation rather than whether to have the conversation at all. I think that is a good place to start. Like limit magazine sizes to 25 rounds or something. Why do you need a 100-round magazine? There are, and I'm just throwing out things. Like, we can have conversations. If you think 25 is too small, well, what do you think and why? Let's actually have a discussion. I don't think Vic is disagreeing with me, but like to the NRA people, but nobody gives. Okay, yeah. Fewer people died because they have cell phones and can call 911. Fewer people, I don't know what that means. Fewer people died because of what? Or because fewer people died of what? Nothing you say. I haven't flip-flopped at all. I want gun control. I think that people should be able to have guns if they are law-abiding citizens. The gun control is, we need to control it so that only law-abiding citizens can have guns. Crime is absolutely, okay, it's not 100% fact. I have assault gun. Did I have an assault gun? Did you mean that? I didn't keep my assault rifle because I'm not in the military anymore. I have assault rifles and they go with me everywhere. Okay. I don't know why you're so afraid. Have you been locked up? Who's talking about locking you up? People who use them to hurt others people who use them to hurt others don't care about your laws. No, people who murder people don't care about my laws. That does not mean that murder should be legal. There are laws already in place, and the ones who hurt people don't follow them. Right. So that means we shouldn't have laws because people break them? How does that make sense in your head? Like, when you're typing that out and you're thinking, whoa, this is a great point. Are you actually thinking about the thoughts that you're having? Yes. People who break laws don't care about the laws, but the laws are not there to make them care about it. The laws are there so that if you break them, you can be punished for doing it. Yes, laws are for the lawless. Like, that's the whole point of them. If nobody ever did anything wrong, we wouldn't need any laws. We have laws because people do wrong things, and we make those wrong things illegal so that people either A, won't do them, or B, will be punished if they do them. Yes, we have laws about drinking and driving. Are you ready to hold? It's not the same thing. They're not designing. If they were designing cars that had like a holder for Jack Daniels and had like little straws that come up from the Jack Daniels bottles and had like, you know, ways to get more inebriated while you're driving, then I would say yes. They're not designing the cars to be driven while drunk. When you're designing weapons to shoot lots of people with, that's different than just designing weapons. He ignores the real issue. What is the real issue? Tell me the real issue I'm ignoring. We do have lots of 45,000 people a year getting shot and killed. They're not working. Gun laws are stricter than what? Than buying alcohol? Gun laws should be stricter than buying alcohol. Like, I have no problem with a felon being able to go and buy a beer. A violent felon can go buy a beer. I don't care. Donald Trump is a felon. He can go buy a beer. I have a problem with somebody buying a beer, whether they've broken a law or not. I have a problem with somebody that has a violent criminal history going and buying a gun. I don't have a problem if they buy a beer. Gun laws should be stricter than buying alcohol. I don't know what's not the same. If you take high capacity mags, that is direct. It's not. It's not. And again, go back. I'm not going to re-talk about the first 30 minutes. You're wrong about the Second Amendment. The people that kill their children want gun control. I don't know. I've never killed a child, honestly. We already have laws for that. The people who break the laws will break any more you add as well. Okay. But again, laws are about enforcement too, right? If you make something illegal, then there's the enforcement mechanism, which means that people can be punished for breaking the laws. If murder weren't illegal, you wouldn't be able to punish anybody for murder. But people still murder. Does that mean we should do away with laws against murder? The last admin tried to de facto ban guns. No, they didn't. Like, they did not. That's just made up. We need gun control, but to a certain extent. Yes, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. We need gun control to a certain extent. Actually, gun control is like the whole, what extent? That's the conversation. What is the extent to which we should have it? Like I said, there's three ways you can argue. Either everybody should have a gun no matter what, nobody should have a gun no matter what, or some people should be able to have a gun, but not everybody. And that's what gun control is. Who should be able to have guns? Under what conditions should people not be allowed to have guns? It's really that simple. But somehow people, like, if you say anybody can't have a gun, some people want to hear that as nobody can't have a gun. I agree with you. What extent? That's the whole conversation. What is the extent? Crying shame, the control already passed. I don't know what that means. The Supreme Court has determined that some level of control is allowed. Even in Heller, they affirmed that. If Democrats keep pushing, they're going to find out why we have a Second Amendment and why it's our favorite. Okay, so you want to go and shoot people who disagree with you, and you want me to believe you're not a danger. Okay, everywhere, huh? I don't know what everywhere is. I think we should control the blade out of all the weapons we sent to Ukraine. Yes, using weapons in war is like what I love it when people like talk about the Ukraine thing. Like, oh, if guns are so bad, why were you using them? Because they're like war weapons and they're at war. They got invaded. They're defending themselves. Again, I don't have a problem with people owning guns to defend themselves. I don't have a problem with Ukraine owning guns to defend itself. So this guy's just going to keep going on about abortion. Okay, some of these comments, I think I might have. Okay, why are people like you? Why are people like you putting people who committed active violence out on the street? This to even be an issue. I'm not. Okay. But you know who is? Donald Trump. Donald Trump pardoned all those like 1,500 people, and some of them have gone and committed violent crimes since they've been out. So why don't you ask yourself that question if you voted for Donald Trump? OFC battleships back then were more like galleons. Do you have a problem? So you do have a problem. Okay. Thank you. How many AR-15s in Ukraine? 0. I have no idea what relevance you think that has to anything. And I also very highly doubt that there's not one AR-15 in Ukraine. Everyone should have firearms, all gun control. This is not true. None of what you said is true. Okay, why is your first solution to the problem to infringe upon the rights of the law-abiding? Again, I have no problems with law-abiding people having guns. Dismiss it doesn't change the fact that millions of gun owners were criminalized by the Biden. I'm not dismissing it. It's just not true. Americans at war with libtards. But Paul Jones was I don't know what Paul Jones. I don't know what that was. What controls do you think need to be in place? Again, I think that we need to have that discussion. I think it needs to be an honest discussion, but I don't even think it's possible when you're getting berated by comments with people that are like saying stupid things like, oh, if you have laws, people will break them. Like, I think we need to find a way to balance the people who the access for people who can have guns, who can be trusted with them and be responsible with them, and those who can't. I would say that I think what we need to do is have a shift in our thinking in terms of the responsible gun owners need to be responsible for their guns they own. Like, that needs to become the primary focus of it. Bro voted for, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay. I don't know what that's talking about. No, I'm not wrong about the Second Amendment. I don't have TDS. It's not even a real thing. It's your stance to free these criminals. I don't know who you're talking about. Yes. People also have cars. Name one. Name one what? I'm going to go back into the cat videos. This discussion is getting no place. Enjoy the cat videos. My cat's not even in here. Huggy Bear says hi. Citizens have the right to forcibly replace their government when it ceases to serve the people. Okay. Why does the Constitution give the why does it say about the militias that it empowers the federal government to put down insurrections? What are insurrections? And why does the federal government have the constitutional power to suppress them? Why is Donald Trump talking about the Insurrection Act? Why do we have an Insurrection Act? Why when there's protests that liberals have against ICE agents, because they don't feel that it's serving the people? Do you support those protests, or do you support the government arresting the people that are doing it? I'm just wondering to you, what is the difference between an insurrection and whatever you think of protests that you disagree with? If the protesters started shooting ICE agents, would you support them? Because that's what you're arguing. You're arguing that if a group of people disagree with the government, they can shoot the people in the government that are enforcing the law. Or is it just you get to cherry pick when and who is insurrecting and when and who is overthrowing a tyrannical government? What about the 200 FBI agents that there weren't there were FBI agents that came in after it started? Donald Trump was president on January 6th. Like, that's just a dumb thing to say. You are a dumb person for saying it. You made everybody that is watching this dumber for having said that. Okay, you pumped up current chat. You got to take what you can get. He has TDS bad. Yeah, this fictional thing. Walter is going nowhere because this guy has no data to support his position. I won't engage with any of the real arguments that are being made. I'm actually engaging with all of the arguments that are being made. The problem is nobody's actually engaging on what I'm saying. At least none of the MAGA weirdos are. Like, I am saying, again, I think that we should make it so that only people who are law-abiding citizens should be able to buy guns. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? Answer that question. Snow. Okay, so all the laws you mentioned are already the law. Not all of them, and some of them need to be made more effective. Some of them need to be more enforced. I don't see clearly we need to do something we're not doing. The whole point I am trying to have a conversation about right here is that we need to do something else. And we need to do something more without taking away the rights of law-abiding citizens. Like, we need to do that. Like, we can do both. Trump can do it because Biden blanket pardon for everyone in his administration. Okay. Biden pardon everyone in his administration. Ukraine is getting M164s. 684. Yes. Absolutely not. Well, you said it in caps lock, so it must be true. Why do you act like you don't understand? I don't even understand what the context of what I don't understand is. Like, there's a lot of comments here. So, like, I don't see every single one. You're dismissing it. I don't know what I'm dismissing. Frank, because I don't know what I'm gaslighting. There's like, is it true? Is it true you denying it isn't remotely the same as searching Chevron? I know what the Chevron defense was. I don't know what What does Chevron defense have to do with anything? What does Chevron defense have to do with gun control? The Chevron defense was that the executive branch could interpret the legislative laws if they weren't specific enough. The Supreme Court recently overruled and changed that and said that if it's unclear, then the judicial branch gets to decide. Has nothing to do with gun control. The initial thing was about the EPA and Chevron. Okay. You're not, see, this is, you don't engage on the content. You just yell insults and then you run away. Do you think that law-abiding citizen, do you think that people who are not law-abiding citizens should be allowed to buy guns? You don't have a problem if you do not have a solution. Yes, you do. You can have a problem and not know the solution. Okay, I am such a fool, but you cannot even engage in the content at all in anything that I've said. AutoPen just, okay, AutoPen, we just the AutoPen now. I bet the people president at Brown University wish they had constitutional care. As I actually go to the opening, I went to a school after a mass shooting outside of the context of gun control arguments. I talked to about 100 people. I was handing out Bibles. I was talking to people, asking what they were doing. This was at Northern Illinois. After the mass shooting there, the Korean guy that shut up the school. Asked a bunch of people what they were going through afterwards. Every single one of them was talking about texting their loved ones. Not one of them said that they wish they had a gun. So you can bet what you want, but you would lose the bet. There may occasionally be somebody, but most people, when they're in that situation, are not thinking, oh, gee, I wish I had a gun. Most people are thinking, I wish the guy that's killing everybody didn't have a gun. I love how Grandpa can't fix his computer screen on his glasses. Okay, I don't know how to make like glass not reflect. I'm sorry, I have not figured that one out. If you have a magic solution, I'm open to hear it. It bothers me too. I know the reflection thing you're talking about. I've looked for glasses that have like anti-reflective coating for reading glasses. I can't read without the glasses, and I can't like not have the light on the computer. Okay. Oh wait. Okay. I love owning. Okay. Good. Never said you shouldn't have them. Never once said you shouldn't have them. If you're a law-abiding citizen, go ahead, buy guns. Never said you shouldn't. Death sentence for gun crimes. I don't know if I'd go that far. Okay, I'm an asshat. Research the Heller and oh, okay, yeah. Actually, that's not really what Heller says. It says, you know, guns in common use, and the actual AR-15s has not been reviewed yet, but they weren't in common use at the time. Now they are. That is still, like, to me, Heller is junk. Heller is just bad on its premise because, you know, he just threw away the whole militia clause as though it was just there because of poetry or something. Like, Heller is a bad decision. And again, I'm not going to go into it again. If you care, I've got a whiteboard video on why, and I've also discussed it a bit earlier in the show. Is he just staring at 3 menu? No, I don't even know what that means. I'm looking at the computer screen. Okay. I'm not saying responsible gun owners shouldn't have guns. I am not saying that responsible gun owners shouldn't have guns. I don't know why everything has to keep coming. I mean, like, if I say I don't think responsible gun owners shouldn't have guns, and you think that I am saying you shouldn't have a gun, then you are telling me that you are not a responsible gun owner. Oh, bullcrap. You are proof that, no, I'm not. It doesn't exist. Okay. The Second Amendment is why America likely won't end up going in the direction we're seeing in Europe. Oh, so you're going to shoot immigrants, huh? You're going to murder people. You're going to kill people for being brown. Tough guy. We know we aren't in the militia. The Constitution. Have you read anything other than like the Constitution says what is the militia? Does Congress appoint your officers? Everyone that is signed up for the draft? No, that's not true. It's history. It's not debatable. Okay, this guy, I don't know what your issue is. Okay, yes, because it's the kind of person who will, yeah, blah, blah, blah. What about the immigrant that defends the country? Okay, so you're also an Islamophobe. You're like really a nasty piece of work. Okay. Yes, read Article 1 and Article 2. Read the actual Constitution. The Bill of Rights. Do you know this? Do you know why they're called the first 10 amendments? Because they're amendments to the Constitution. All right. So when it talks about the militia in the Second Amendment, it's referring to the militia that is talked about in the actual body of the Constitution. It is amending what the Constitution says about militias. So you can't take the Second Amendment and divorce it from the rest of the Constitution. ICE is serving Americans who voted for immigration reform. Okay. But why does that mean that people that disagree with it can't shoot them? Your argument is that if people feel that the government is being tyrannical, they can like go around shooting people. Okay, hundreds of FBI agents present. Yeah, that just weirdo conspiracy stuff. This guy is an idiot. Okay. This is the Islamophobic racist here calling me an idiot. Okay, TDS, grow up, Kelly. You have some real dumb trolls. MAGA smart enough to understand. MAGA, it's crazy. Mock versus Garland. Fine. Okay. There were not numerous undercover FBI agents. I'm not going to go into that because it's a different topic. The same people are holding up foreign. And again, Donald Trump was president on January 6th. All right. Donald Trump was in charge of the FBI. The same people are holding up foreign countries' flags. Yes. Yes, people hold up other countries' flags. After you take guns away from the... Who's talking about taking guns away? That's a good one. I think that's a good thing that we could do is actually make people, and this goes along with what I was saying, make responsible gun owners responsible for the guns they own. I think there are things we can do on that venue. Like if you're saying, why shouldn't responsible gun owners be allowed to have guns? I'm agreeing. But if responsible gun owners have guns, they should be responsible for the guns they own. Yes, and I've addressed this several times. That having people breaking laws is not a reason to not have laws. The guy spends every okay. How do we know who is a radical Muslim? A radical Muslim is who follows Muhammad. Believe in Allah and the Quran. Okay. Don't know what that has to do with gun control. Require gun owners to carry a liability insurance to own a firearm. Rates based on the propensity for damage. And get the insurance requires annual mental health exam. I think that's a good starting point. Like, I wish we could have more like actual conversation about what we should do, instead of just people yelling that we shouldn't do what I'm not saying we shouldn't do. Bring back capital punishment. The problem with capital punishment is too many of the people that were being killed weren't actually guilty. As I repeat, okay. Yeah, I'm not displaying your comments anymore. They're too racist. Yeah, so many like how can you have logical conversation with people that just keep asking the same stupid question and not listening to the answer? I am not talking about banning guns. Never once said in this entire conversation to ban guns. So why are you deliberately stupid, or are you trying to? I'm like, what is wrong with your head? My argument is that we should limit who has guns to people who follow the law. Boom. And we need to figure out how to keep people who don't follow the law from getting guns. How is that hard? What part of that? Like, can you like zero in on the confusion you're having? Because you're reading, because most of your sentence structure is just weird. Like, some of you really have no idea how grammar works. Okay, I don't know how many times I mean, like, this is just wow, just people just cycling through the same. Yes, I have a problem with racism. This man is the kind of person who wants his freedom, but will not protect him, will not do what it takes. Okay, this is just meandering weirdness. Doesn't matter what side you're on. Emotional people exist on both sides. Yes, people have emotions. Australia has no mass shootings for 30 years. Now America is trying to say we know what's best to stop mass shootings. LOL. How many Republicans do you think commit violent crimes? I don't think that they really measure violent crimes by party registration. I'll be reporting your channel to the police. You advocated. No, I didn't. And that's just a lie. I used a logical rebuttal that if somebody is saying that a government or that if somebody is arguing for armed insurrections, then they are arguing that it is okay to shoot ICE agents. I am not. I'm actually the one against it. I'm the one saying, no, you can't have an insurrection. The one arguing for it is the dude that made the stupid comment. Keep telling yourself January 6th was not a setup. The idea that January 6th was a setup is just dumb. Donald Trump was president. Okay, this guy, my goodness, you just like control pasting that. So this guy hates a third of the population of the world. I have no idea what this guy is. Just, I don't know. Apparently he is the lone person who gets to decide what people care about. Yes, the person that I use the word Islamophobe because somebody called literally every single Muslim an extreme Muslim, or somebody called every single Muslim an extremist and a threat. So yes, I called them an Islamophobe. Being a responsible gun owner means looking like that's a third of the population of the world. Being a responsible gun owner means locking up your guns with kids in the house and learning how to shoot safely and properly. That is part of it. That is included. But you still haven't. I keep trying to have that conversation, and I've mentioned a few things. I don't know why you say I haven't tried to answer the question. And like I said, let's have the conversation. I am not saying that I have all the solutions. I am saying gun control is the conversation to get to solutions. Why stop with guns? What about knife insurance? So I'm sure the illegally obtained gun owners that can, okay. But if people that illegally obtained guns don't have insurance, that is, again, something else you can charge them with. That is a crime that then becomes something that you can put them in jail for, where they're not going to have guns. Like, why is it that people don't understand that laws are not meant there to not be broken? Laws are there so that when people do them, you can do something about it. I don't know how many times, like, I've answered this kind of argument like 25 times. Any argument that begins like, well, if you make it illegal, then criminals are going to break the law. Of course they are. That doesn't mean you don't make it illegal. You don't make murder. You don't say, oh, let's not make murder illegal because murderers are just going to murder people anyway. Convicted violent felons. And because they have a history of violence. I don't run around waving my guns or shooting people. That's called being responsible. Yes. Okay. Don't know anybody said you weren't. So when you're hindering responsible, who's hindering responsible gun owners from the right to protect them? Where did I hinder you? How have you been hindered? All right. I think I've got to pee. Sorry, been at this for almost 4 hours now. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope some of you can go back and watch the first part of it and at least try to understand things instead of just throw out names and stuff like that. Clearly there are some people that are just too bent in their system of thinking to like consider the possibility that some people actually think that they should be allowed to own guns, but other people shouldn't. Like, I don't think criminals should have guns. I think we need to do something to make sure criminals aren't getting guns. It has nothing to do with you. If you are not a criminal, if you are not threatening to kill your wife or whatever, like if you're not a mentally unstable person that's ready to go on a shooting spree, and you're not a violent criminal, I don't have a problem with you having a gun. But if you're going to say, oh, the people that do all the shootings are these other people, and then you don't want to do something to keep all those other people from having guns, then you're like not making sense. I am saying keep those people from having guns, and that's what gun control is. Gun control is not gun banning. It's not preventing you from having a gun. It's preventing them from having a gun. At least try to understand that. All right. We're done. Thanks for watching. Enjoy the game tonight if you're watching that. By the way, sorry if you're a Chiefs fan. Rough and early way for the season to end.